The Dulce Book. By Branton. Foreword. Have respect unto the covenant, for the dark places of the earth are full of the habitations of cruelty. Psalms 74:20. Small bullet. What's going on near Dulce, New Mexico? Small bullet above top secret military industrial black projects. Small bullet headquarters for a Bavarian-backed New World Order. Small bullet vanguard for alien infiltration and invasion. Small bullet massive intelligence agency disinformation. Small bullet collective mind control or mass hallucination. Small bullet all of or a combination of the above. For several decades, researchers of paranormal phenomena have devoted themselves to specialized fields of French scientific investigation. Some of these various fields of borderline research, which have surfaced in order to document or attempt to explain a wide divergence of phenomena, have included aerial or UFO phenomena, psychic or psychotronic investigation, cattle and animal mutilations, vampirism, men in black, conspiracies and assassinations, secret societies, underground anomalies, quantum mechanics, legends and mythology, ancient civilizations, the Mothman and other cryptozoological encounters, energy grids and other geomagnetic anomalies, biogenetics and cloning, cybernetics and artificial intelligence, abductions and missing time, hypnotherapy and mind control, missing persons. There are no doubt many others that I have not mentioned. In the 1950s, experts in some of these areas of investigation began hearing the first faint hints that something was going on in the American Southwest, near the Four Corners region of the United States. First, these hints and rumors were brief, vague and confusing, yet they sparked enough interest to provoke further investigations as the years passed. At first, these French scientists who concerned themselves with the mysteries and anomalies of this region began raising more questions than answers, as they continued to probe into an enigma which seemed to eventually focus itself in and around a small desert town lost amidst the mesas of northwestern New Mexico. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, the mystery, and subsequently the interest, deepened as reports began to slowly emanate from the area suggesting that something significant and horrifying had taken place there, near the small town of Dulce, pronounced Dulce, New Mexico. The many different phenomena, those previously mentioned, seemed for some strange reason to converge and coagulate into one vast enigmatic scenario of high strangeness in and around this seemingly insignificant and small New Mexican town. Researchers commenced to analyze and categorize their respective phenomena, looking for patterns and concentrations, and came to the realization that several of these phenomena apparently converged in the American Southwest. The charts showed the largest concentrations of UFO sightings, northwestern New Mexico. The epicenter of cattle mutilation phenomena, northwestern New Mexico. Other experts in their fields began to find similar patterns merging and linking with other phenomena at underlying levels. Researchers into conspiracies, secret societies, underground anomalies, legends and mythology, ancient civilizations, energy grids, geomagnetic anomalies, biogenetics, abductions and missing time, missing persons and investigators of other specialized vanguard fields of research began looking toward this small desert town. These unusual convergences of phenomena in a singular locale sparked even more interest and investigation. From that point on, it was as if some ancient seal had been broken, as if an ancient cloud of darkness had begun imploding in upon itself, broken apart by the piercing light of human perception and the relentless probings and scrutiny of brave and daring souls. Sensing that something very wrong and unnatural was going on here, something ancient and evil, some of these brave souls, who by choice or chance found themselves battling it out on the front lines against ancient forces that were determined to keep themselves from being exposed, continued to wage their all too often personal battles against the enigma. Some of these inevitably losing their minds, if not their very lives in the process. As these brave souls were worn down by the intensity of this psychic warfare in their efforts to expose and defeat this mystery of iniquity, to coin a biblical phrase, they sent out desperate calls for reinforcements. Many answered the call, and the ancient and formerly invisible beast that had managed to hide itself below the deserts of the Southwest like a dragon in its lair, began to stir in rage and terror at these new exposures, and to lash back at its newfound enemies. The repercussions began to be felt throughout the whole country, through which the beast had reached out its deadly tentacles, which were also in the process of being exposed along with the black heart of the beast itself. The walls of the ancient fortress concealing the beast or the enigma began to crumble and fall with increasing intensity. From the murky blackness within, a faint collective cry was heard as if from another world, the voices of multitudes who were desperately calling out for help to the only ones who could hear them, those who were beginning to see yet had not yet become the slaves of the enigma itself. Many of us who have continued the battle have sacrificed our comfort, our social and economic welfare, and in some cases even our very lives to fight the enigma, because we have caught a brief glimpse of the potential threat that the enemy within poses to the future of liberty and to this great independent nation of America. What you will see throughout these pages is the collective results of our efforts and, I'm not ashamed to say, the results of more than a little divine intervention as well. Many of us, such as yours truly, have been victimized by the enigma for the greater part of our lives, and have decided that the only way to be free from its grasp is to practice the old military rule, the best defense is a good offense. So there you have it. Like those before us, we send this work forth as a warning and a call to arms, to others who value truth and freedom. For those who may not believe everything that follows, I challenge you to become personally involved, however, using caution in the event that these collective reports do turn out to be true and prove the claims made herein point by point, one way or another. This is the challenge that those of us who have contributed to this work leave with you. I remain. Branton. Dedication. To the woman of my dreams, whose distant cries have reached me in the night. Whoever you are, wherever you are, this book is for you. Introduction. Note, I must confess that I have thought very long and hard about the possibility of publishing this text in book format in order to relieve the financial burden upon myself that has resulted from a lifetime of mental and emotional suffering due to my own personal involvement with the enigma. Angry at the personal loss, I justify it to myself that if I can make a profit by selling the innermost secrets of those hidden and insidious powers working behind the enigma, as its overlords, then there would be nothing wrong with benefiting at their expense. I still believe this to be so. However, realizing that events in this world are quickly leading to a final apocalyptic crisis, understanding the pain that millions of abductees around the world have felt and are feeling, and hearing the distant cries of those who are lost deep within the labyrinthine depths of the enigma itself, I have decided that the right thing to do would be to send this information forth at no cost, other than the heavy price that all those who have brought this information to you have paid. Consider it my patriotic duty. All I ask in return would be for your prayers, for the many abductees who have been rejected by an unbelieving and cynical world, for myself and those who have contributed to this work so that our sacrifices will not have been in vain, and especially for those who are the most desperate of all, those who have become lost within the cruel dungeons of the enigma itself. Pray that they might be protected and preserved even in the midst of the fearful hopelessness and despair which they face, so that they might once again see the light of day. Disclaimer. Much of the information in this volume is of an incredible and, some might say, an unbelievable nature. I have decided not to hold back any information or claims regarding the Dulce enigma and related scenarios, the reason for this being that underground or earth-based anomalies are always there for anyone who is interested or daring enough to probe and investigate. UFO events often appear and disappear along with the evidence when the object or objects depart. Underground or earth-based anomalies on the other hand cannot and do not disappear at will, and because of this they are far more vulnerable to being exposed, as legitimate or not. Throughout this volume I have nevertheless offered my own opinions and perspectives based on circumstantial evidence, two or more reports from different sources which relay identical themes, and so on. These admittedly are my own opinions and can be received or discarded according to the reader's own perceptions in regards to the nature of reality. I have formed these opinions based on my own perceptions of the overall data, and since these are my perceptions, they are not infallible but are subject to change or revision with the revelation of new information. The reader is free to form his or her own conclusions and opinions based on the accumulated data, just as I have done. Whether you consider the information which follows science fact, science fiction or perhaps a little of both science fiction, you might say, this should not detract from the fact that these reports, which have arrived from hundreds of different sources and have been condensed within this one volume, make for fascinating reading, either way one looks at it. So with this there is nothing else to share in the way of introductions, other than to say, sit back and enjoy the ride. Branton. October, 1996. Chapter 1. Those conspiracies that are too incredible to be believed are by the same right those which most often succeed. The following article comes from the single quote EC Technical Consultant, Nov. Dec. 1991 issue. The death of a journalist in West Virginia, plus the jailing of an alleged CIA computer consultant in Washington state may be elements of a much wider scandal that could have serious implications. What started out as an investigation of an apparent case of pirated software has grown to be a project involving hundreds of journalists all over the world. The dead journalist, Joseph Daniel Downey Casolaro, was found dead August 10 in a motel room in West Virginia. His wrists were slashed 7 times on each wrist and a suicide note was found nearby. The only manuscript of his book, with accompanying notes, was missing. The book, provisionally titled The Octopus, was meant to be an explosive expose of misdeeds by the Justice Department under the Reagan administration. Time magazine also reported that Casolaro's research centered on gambling and attempted arms deals at the Cabazon Reservation near Indio, California. Indeed, the scope of Casolaro's investigation was so large that any one of a large number of areas of research could have been the trigger for a possible hit. While authorities declared his death a suicide, his relatives definitely stated that Casolaro's mental state was sound, indeed upbeat, after the completion of his book. Casolaro started his work nearly 2 years before, investigating the bankrupting of a small computer software company called Inslaw, allegedly by the United States Justice Department. Inslaw, a company headed by Bill and Nancy Hamilton of Washington, D.C., no connection to researcher Bill Hamilton, whose writings on the Dulce enigma appear later in this volume. Branton had developed a package known as PROMIS, short for a Prosecutor's Management Information System, to act as a case management tool for the Justice Department's unwieldy workload. Inslaw President Bill Hamilton has claimed that Ed Meese associate Earl Bryan was given control of pirated versions of the PROMIS software by Meese to sell back to the United States government agencies for great profit. 2 courts have so far agreed with Hamilton, awarding an $8 million judgment, but a higher Justice Department Branton Court of Appeal has quashed the award and the verdict, declaring that it was not the jurisdiction of the lower courts. As of October 9, the case has moved into the realm of the Supreme Court. Earl Bryan owns United Press International (UPI) and Financial News Network (FNN), according to a Washington man, who claims to have modified the COBOL-based software for the CIA and other intelligence agencies. The software was a reward for Earl Bryan's role in arranging the so-called October Surprise Gambit, the alleged conspiracy to withhold the American hostages in Iran until after the 1980 election, which saw Carter removed from power. The October Surprise scandal has taken some time to emerge. In the Paris meeting, President Bush is alleged to have met with Ali Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani, the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, Mohammad Ali Rajai, the future President of Iran, and Manoucher Ghorbanifar, an Iranian arms dealer with connections to Mossad, according to Navy Captain Gunther Russbacher, who claims to have flown Bush, William Casey, the CIA chief, and Donald Gregg, a CIA operative, to that location. Russbacher, who made these allegations in May, is now in jail on Terminal Island, convicted on the charge of impersonating the United States Attorney. Note: Russbacher defected from the CIA with 12 Navy SEALs under his command, and was on at least 2 occasions the target of attempted CIA hits. The would-be assassins attempted to drive Gunther and his wife off of roads and down the side cliffs to their deaths. However, according to Russbacher, his SEAL team agents who were watching over him unbeknownst to the intended assassins, moved up quickly from behind and sent the CIA hitmen to their deaths instead. Branton, the Washington man, is Michael Riconosciuto, who is now waiting for a trial in a Washington jail on conspiracy to sell drugs charges which Riconosciuto claims are manufactured. Indeed, the charge made against Riconosciuto were made 1 week after Riconosciuto authored and signed an affidavit describing his role in modifying the pirated software. Note: it is interesting what connections we can find here. Michael Riconosciuto was a Walkenhut CIA employee who told researcher Michael Lindemann that he had attempted to get a whole helicopter full of documents and evidence detailing illegal biogenetic activities and non-congressionally sanctioned projects involving illegal aliens out of the Nevada test site. The chopper was blown out of the sky, killing all 5 personnel on board. Michael's father happened to be Marshal Riconosciuto, a fascist and a supporter of Adolf Hitler, who was a very close friend of Fred L. Chrisman. Chrisman was involved in the Maury Island UFO sighting incident in 1937 near Tacoma, Washington, which researcher Anthony Kimori believes involved the test flight of hybrid CIA, Project Paperclip, Nazi aerial discs. There are several sources which claim that by the early 1940s the Nazis had succeeded in test flying wingless lenticular craft powered by rotary devices, rocket power, and donut configuration jet turbine engines, rather than cylindrical, with the cabin stabilized by gyro, the compressors rotating in one direction and the expansion chambers and vectored exhausts rotating in the opposite direction. In fact, the movie The Battle of the Bulge correctly implies that this, one of the largest military battles during World War II between American and German forces, was an attempt by the Germans to buy time and prolong the war just a little while longer, for within a few more months the Germans would have been mass-producing jet fighters, bombers and other superweapons that would have been invincible to the turboprop fleets of the Allies. With the Allied invasion of Germany just before mass production began, many of the prototypes and plans of the Nazi military machine were captured. However, most of the most sophisticated prototypes, plans and even scientists mysteriously turned up missing following the war. We will reserve further discussion on this subject until later in this volume. After the war had ended, several of the Nazi scientists who were captured, and who had helped to develop the revolutionary aircraft, were recruited by the CIA as a result of a secret deal that had been made between Alan Dulce, a member of the Bavarian Illuminati, and Nazi SS General Reinhard Gehlen, a member of the Bavarian Thule Society. The deep connections between the Bavarian Illuminati, which sponsored the CIA, and the Bavarian Thule Society, which sponsored the Nazis, allowed for the upper covertops levels of the CIA to be manned by nothing less than the core of the Nazi SS itself, with the help of fascist sympathizers and fifth-column double agents working within American intelligence, although some leading Nazis were sacrificed to the Nuremberg trials to appease the Allies and establish the illusion that Europe had been denazified. Fred L. Chrisman incidentally was a witness to the Maury Island event and had helped two Army G2 agents acquire slag samples which fell from one of the 6 donut-shaped ships observed. On their way to deliver the samples to Wright-Patterson F. in Ohio, their plane crashed and both G2 agents were killed. Some people at the time insisted that the plane had been sabotaged. 2 of the reporters who investigated the incident lost their lives, and Kenneth Arnold, who investigated the incident after being commissioned by Amazing Stories editor Ray Palmer, claimed that his conversations with a high Air Force official concerning the subject were electronically monitored. Also, strange government agents in dark suits were seen in the area. Shortly after his investigation, Kenneth Arnold, during an air search for a crashed plane over Mount Rainier, saw 9 crescent-shaped discs which he called flying saucers. The news media publicized the incident and the term stuck and became a media catchword ever since. Also around this same time, 1947, Arnold escaped a near-fatal crash when his airplane mysteriously lost power. The connections do not end here. Fred L. Chrisman was a close friend to Clayshaw, whom Louisiana District Attorney James Garrison, see the movie JFK, accused of being the CIA mafia go-between in the John F. Kennedy murder. Garrison arrested Shaw in an effort to charge him and the CIA with the JFK assassination. However, only a few days before the hearing, Garrison's star witness David Ferry was killed, and Garrison's remaining evidence was not enough to bring about a conviction. Fred Chrisman was the first man Clayshaw called when he heard that Garrison intended to implicate him. Garrison also believed that Clayshaw himself was involved with Project Paperclip, the secret operation to bring Nazi war criminals into the United States by the hundreds, some say thousands, and give them immunity and new identities in such institutions as the United States intelligence, the military-industrial complex, the space agencies, and the various Rockefeller-connected oil cartels such as Arco, Standard, Exxon, Zapata, etc., corporations that were supported by the Bavarian-based secret society lodges, corporations that had actually sold oil to the Nazis during World War II and helped keep the Nazi war machine operating. According to Garrison, Chrisman worked as a middleman between the fascist policymakers and the lower echelons of the military-industrial complex. Oh, what a tangled web! These American megabankers and traders to freedom had supported the Nazis in an effort to initiate a Bavarian-backed New World Order, under the cover of the Third Reich. Read the book Neanderthal IT Conspiracy, by the late Gary Allen for more on the Rockefeller connection, and also the various works by Dr. Anthony Sutton. Branton, the affidavit also claimed that he, Michael Riconosciuto, had been contacted by phone and threatened by Peter Vidaniaks, a Justice Department employee and customs official who Riconosciuto alleged had intelligence ties, as to the possible consequences of his going public with certain information. According to Reconocimiento, Vidanieks was a frequent visitor to the Cabazon Indian Reservation near Palm Springs and visited with tribal manager, John P. Nichols. Nichols was in essence Reconocimiento's boss, and a number of enterprises conducted on reservation land, and the Promise notification was just one of these projects. According to Reconocimiento, in an interview with TC conducted from jail, the Promise software was modified to install a backdoor access for use by American intelligence services. The software was then sold to 88 different countries as a sort of Trojan horse package enabling us to access their intelligence systems. According to Reconocimiento, these countries included Iraq and Libya. Correspondence between Nichols and other companies, if authentic, indicates that Reconocimiento's claims of his expertise in the area of electronics and armaments appear to be true. Marshal Reconocimiento, Michael's father, is a reputed former business partner of Richard Nixon. According to Reconocimiento, the fuzzy status of reservation land as sovereign allowed elements of the CIA and organized crime to conduct business uniquely. Among the projects worked on during this time were joint projects with Wakanut, a company loaded with former CIA and NSA personnel, and business ventures with the Saudi Arabian royal family, and other unusual projects. A joint venture with Southern California Edison will soon be generating power for biomass drawn from local waste outlets. Biological warfare projects were investigated with Stormont Laboratories looking into the creation of pathogenic viruses, and enhanced fuel-air explosive weapons were created and tested in league with Meridian Arms at the Nevada testing range, which matched the explosive power of nuclear devices. These enhanced weapons gained their power from polarizing the molecules in the gas cloud by modification of the electric field, a technology developed from exploring Thomas Townsend Brown's suppressed work, a knowledge which Reconocimiento claims he gained from working at Lear in Reno, Nevada. Reconocimiento is said to have worked on the enhanced fuel-air explosive weapons with Gerald Bull of Space Research Corporation. Bull, now deceased, later became an arms advisor to Saddam Hussein. It is said that Hussein possesses the PHY technology. In July, Anson Ng, a reporter for the Financial Times of London, was shot and killed in Guatemala. He had reportedly been trying to interview an American there named Jimmy Hughes, a one-time director of security for the Cabazon Indian Reservation secret projects. In April, a Philadelphia attorney named Dennis Seisman was found dead, killed by a single bullet in his chest. According to a former federal official who worked with Eisman, the attorney was found dead in the parking lot where he had been due to meet with a woman who had crucial evidence to share substantiating Reconocimiento's claims. Both Eisman's and Ng's deaths were declared suicides by authorities. Fred Alvarez, a Cabazon tribal leader who was in vocal opposition to the developments on the reservation, was found shot to death with two friends in 1981. Their murder remains unsolved. The leader of the House, Thomas Foley, announced last month that a formal inquiry will be initiated into the Inslaw case. Foley appointed Senator Terry Sanford as co-chairman of the Joint Congressional Panel. Prior to his election, Senator Sanford was the attorney representing Earl Bryan in his 1985 takeover bid for United Press International, and was instrumental in appointing Earl Bryan, a medical doctor, to the board of Duke Medical School, of which Sanford is president. However, despite repeated requests from journalists to produce photographs showing Reconocimiento together with Bryan, and requests to produce his passport showing his alleged trip to Iran, he has not yet done so. Also, Reconocimiento failed to be able to describe Peter Vidanieks to CNN's Moneyline program, claiming a medical condition prevented him from remembering clearly. This led one former intelligence operative to speculate that we may be witnessing a very sophisticated intelligence operation being played out in public. Former FBI Special Agent, Ted Gunderson, speaks for Reconocimiento's credibility. Gunderson, who lives in Manhattan Beach, has worked with Reconocimiento for many years in his capacity as private investigator. Together, according to Gunderson, they were responsible for thwarting a terrorist operation during the Los Angeles Olympics. According to Gunderson, Reconocimiento was well known in certain circles as a genius in almost all sciences. The so-called drug operation broken up in Washington state was an electro-hydrodynamic mining operation, claimed Gunderson, using Townsend Brown technology. A videotape viewed by this journalist revealed metallic powders and apparent processes unrelated to drug manufacture. Indeed, a government analysis of soil samples revealed the absence of drug contamination, but a high concentration of barium. Barium is often found in high-voltage related work. Unsubstantiated information from an intelligence source claims that the current situation is the visible effect of a war currently going on in the intelligence community between a group centered in the CIA called Aquarius around a powerful center known as MJ-12 and a group known as COM-12 centered around naval intelligence. COM-12 is reputedly trying to sustain or guard action to sustain and preserve constitutional government and is deliberately leaking information damaging to the former group. In the same publication, same issue, there appeared a follow-up article just following the one given above. Written by Thomas Z., the article, titled Walkenhut's Connection with the Black Project World, stated, the Walkenhut Company has a very close connection to the world of black budget projects. Besides being connected with the Cabazon venture mentioned in this issue, it is also responsible, according to jailed computer consultant Michael Reconociuto, for the secret projects being undertaken in Dulce, New Mexico, where the Jicarilla Indian Reservation is being similarly used. After sending two of my colleagues there recently and receiving confirmation that there was a top-secret military-type installation, I decided to call the newspaper office and make an educated bluff. I identified myself as a freelance reporter from Los Angeles, and told the newspaper that I was doing a story on the Cabazon Reservation biological warfare projects that had been undertaken there on behalf of the CIA. I told her that I had heard that there were similar things being done in Dulce and would like to know what was going on. The official I spoke to became frightened and said, I can't talk to you about that. It would be very unprofessional of me to talk to you about that. You'll have to speak to the president of the tribe. She then hung up. I have yet to call back and ask the president of the tribe, but will report on that in the next issue. Walkenhut is also responsible for security of a lot of underground facilities in California and Nevada, including the notorious S4 Area 51 in Nevada, where Townsend Brown flying disc technology, written about in a TC recent issue, has been flying and developing for decades. A recent helicopter crash at the area, where 2 pilots and 3 security guards from Walkenhut flying in a Messerschmitt Bo 105 helicopter were killed, was not at all accidental, claimed Reconociuto, who said that the individuals aboard the helicopter were traveling with sensitive documents. Groups are now investigating Reconociuto's claims. Chapter 2 High Strangeness on Hierarcholetta Plateau. In the spring of 1990, researcher Jason Bishop sent copies of the following report to a select few investigators, and later gave permission for the report to be distributed among a wider readership. Small Bullet is the object described within the report, the product of secret technology being developed by the military-industrial complex as part of some covert or deep-cover space project. Small Bullet, or does it involve something a bit more alien than mere top-secret black project research and top-of-the-line Vanguard aircraft designs, the Stealth series, the Aurora, etc., which are being developed at the Nevada test site? Small Bullet, or could it be a combination of both? The transcript, titled Recollections and Impressions of Visit to Dulce, New Mexico, October 23, 24, 1988 single quote, is reproduced in its entirety below. Upon arrival I was introduced to Dr. John F. Gill, a French national. Dr. Gill has a PhD in math/physics from the University of Paris. He had worked very closely with the French government on the UFO phenomena in that country. Side note, Dr. Gill had also released a report on another Dulce-like base near Pine Gap, Alice Springs, Australia. This base is a massive multi-leveled facility run by the Club of Rome, which, like the Bilderberger organization, is reputedly a cover for the Bavarian Illuminati. The article spoke of anti-gravity disk research, and plans to make Pine Gap a major control center for a New World Order. Pine Gap is equipped with whole levels of computer terminals tied into the major computer mainframes of the world, which contain the intimate details of most of the inhabitants of industrialized nations. The article also spoke of the infiltration of several major religious denominations, the media, international governments, the economy, education, and other levels of society by the Bavarian Illuminati, in order to prepare the way for a New World Order dictatorship. The report also stated that the workers at Pine Gap are highly indoctrinated and programmed so that they do not threaten or sabotage the security of the Illuminati projects being carried out there. Branton. He told me, Bishop continues, that he has not worked in his chosen field for 15 years, having devoted all of his time to research on UFOs. Dr. Gill is an amiable, forthright man. He has no reservations about expressing his own views on the subject. He does hold several beliefs that border on the paranormal. Dr. Gill had his wife, Elaine, with him. My personal view of him is one of caution. Until I get to know him better, I feel that I should be very careful. Edmund Gomez is a rancher. His ranch is 13 miles west of Dulce. Note, accounts given by others state that the ranch is 13 miles east of Dulce. However, whatever the case may be, it's safe to say that the ranch is 13 miles from Dulce. Branton. From 1975 until 1983, the Gomez Ranch was the epicenter of most of the cattle mutilations that took place in the northern New Mexico/southern Colorado area. He told me that his family homesteaded the Dulce area 111 years ago, and that as a result of these mutilations, they lost $100,000 in cattle over an 8-year period. One of these cases occurred only 200 yards behind his home. He showed me the area. Edmund was very open and discussed with me the various mutilation cases that had occurred on his ranch and on those of others. Upon our return from the mountain trip, he invited me to his home, where he shared with me various photographs, clippings, letters, etc. relating to the cases. He loaned me several overhead photographs of the Mount Archuleta area. I hope to be able to have them examined through image intensification techniques. Edmund also told me about the many times that combat-ready troops had been spotted in the area. Some of these troops were found in areas that are only gotten to through four-wheel drive trucks or on foot. This is very rugged country. The troops were also spotted in areas that only the Apache has permission to go. When the reported experimental aircraft went down in 1983, there were hundreds of troops, armed to the teeth, reported in the area. When approached, the troops would run and disappear. Participants in the Mount Archuleta expedition were Gabe Valdez, Edmund Gomez, Dr. John Gill. Name deleted. Manuel Gomez, Edmund's brother. Jeff and Matt Valdez, Gabe's sons. Because of Gabe's position as head of the state police in Dulce and Edmund being a part of the community, we were given permission to go onto the mountain. It is located on the Apache reservation. We left about 14:30 hours, Sunday the 23rd of October 1988. We used Gabe's four-wheel drive pickup truck to get up the mountain. The road was incredibly difficult. At one time we had to dig out the side of the mountain in order to allow the truck to pass. At about 17:30 hours we arrived at the proposed campsite. It was on a relatively flat area about 300 yards from the peak of Mount Archuleta. Gabe and Edmund both told me that in 1978 there was an agreement between the Ute Indians, Colorado, and the federal government. This agreement consisted of the Ute Nation receiving all the territory now occupied along the New Mexico/Colorado border, with the explicit agreement that they would strictly enforce a no trespassing regulation along the border of their territory. Therefore, it is not possible to even cross the Ute reservation without special permission from the tribal headquarters. If caught without this permission, you are liable for a fine and/or jail and expulsion. There is now a road leading to the Archuleta area through the reservation. It is patrolled by the Indian Forest Service. Note, the Colorado border is only a relatively few miles away from and to the north of the Archuleta Plateau. Branton. At 19:51 hours all 7 of us spotted a very bright light coming from the northwest at a very high rate of speed. The object appeared to be boomerang-shaped with a very bright light just below its center. Some have alleged that these boomerang-shaped vehicles may have some connection with a super-secret black-budget space operation called Alternative 3. Branton. The light was a bright white, blue and green. As it approached, it slowed down, obviously under intelligent control, seemed to reverse direction, finally stopping. When it stopped, a shower of what appeared to be sparks were emitted from each end of the boomerang, and then it began moving forward again and disappeared from sight at a very high rate of speed. All this took place in approximately 10 to 15 seconds. We attempted to take a picture of the object but were unsuccessful. About 2200 hours we climbed to the summit of Mount Archuleta and watched for about an hour and a half. We could see across the canyon in the moonlight. This canyon wall is where Paul Benoit's prominent and well-known physicist and UFO investigator claimed an alien base is located, and that during the night their ships are seen entering and leaving cave openings in the cliff wall. During our stay on the peak, we saw 2 very bright lights on the cliff walls in the exact location where Paul said the base openings were. There are no roads on this cliff. The lights would appear suddenly and then fade over a period of time until you could not see them. At this time we also heard voices that sounded like radio transmissions. The voices were not understandable, but they were there nonetheless. The same light pattern was seen by myself and Edmund Gomez as we sat on the cliff. At about 1 o'clock, we also heard voices. At one time we thought we could hear trucks moving, but we could not be sure about this. After 2 o'clock there were no more sightings or sounds. On Monday the 24th of October 1988 the entire party climbed to the peak once again. We were looking for evidence that there had been a crash of an experimental aircraft flown by an Air Force general in 1983. This crash was reported in the newspapers for 2 days as a small plane and then hushed up. The craft was rumored to be a captured UFO, flown by Americans. We were hoping to prove that there indeed had been a crash, but also to find some physical evidence. Dr. Bennewitz reported that the craft had clipped off a large tree in its descent, had hit another tree, regained altitude, skimmed over the peak of Arculeta, and hit a third tree in the valley north of the peak. It was then reported to have hit the ground, flipped over twice and came to rest. We found the trees as reported by Bennewitz. They were all in line with each other and the final resting place. The first tree was about 40 inches in diameter. It was hit about 30 feet off the ground. There was no fire. I have taken samples of this tree for analysis. The other 2 trees were smaller, approximately 12 to 20 inches in diameter. There was evidence of fire with these. Samples of these trees were also taken. Between the second tree and the third tree we found large pieces of what appeared to be part of the first tree. One piece was burnt while next to it was one that had not been burned. Samples were taken. While searching for physical evidence, a standard issue style ballpoint pen was found. This is of the same type used by the United States government but can also be purchased by the general public. Strange to have been found in such a remote place as this canyon. The alleged crash area showed a large semicircular area with new vegetation. The area above the semicircular area was covered with new vegetation also. Samples of the soil of this area were taken. My overall impressions of this trip are mixed. I believe that there is definitely something going on in the area. What it is, I do not know. Perhaps there is a base there. Perhaps it is jointly operated by aliens and the government, as claimed by John Lear. Then again, it could be the United States base so super secret that there are no fences around to arouse any suspicion. Then again I cannot say for sure. I do know that the evidence that we found in SAR definitely points to the fact that something is going on in this area. In apparent confirmation of the above, Gabe Valdez, the former state police officer in Dulce, New Mexico who was a part of the expedition described above, was contacted by researcher Alan D. Walton in 1990, in an attempt to confirm some of the information concerning his involvement in the UFO mutilation investigations. During a telephone conversation with Valdez, the following was learned. He and others had seen strange flying objects in the area, however he himself was unsure whether these were UFOs single quote of alien origin, or some type of top-secret aircraft being tested by some secret faction of the government. Something did crash near Mount Arculeta several years ago, but again, he did not find any evidence conclusively proving whether it was an object of human or alien origin. There is another road leading to the Mount Arculeta area and mesa aside from the one which goes through the Ute Indian Reservation. As for the Ute Reservation Road, much of it is in good condition, paved. Only the area around the Arculeta region itself requires four-wheel drive vehicles. He did investigate cattle mutilations, and at least in some cases a known nerve agent was discovered in the carcasses, and other indications suggesting that the cattle were being used for research in DNA experiments. Quite by accident, while scanning the internet, I was surprised to discover yet another confirmation of the events described earlier by Jason Bishop. This third confirmation of UFO activity near Dulce, New Mexico by members of the expedition team was given by none other than John Gilley, one of the Mount Arculeta expedition team members mentioned earlier. Gilley's own report follows. Subject, UFO report from Dulce, New Mexico, file, UFO 749. Summary. Report of UFO sighting over Mount Arculeta, New Mexico on October 23, 1988 by John F. Gillett, L. Location and time. Southern slopes of Mount Arculeta, 5 miles NW of Dulce, New Mexico. Location of the phenomenon, south to north trajectory for about 2 miles stopping very close to Mount Arculeta summit. Estimated closest observer's distance, 480 yards. Distance from observers to spot where the UFO stopped, 510 yards. Time, 7:51 p.m. Mountain Time. Duration, estate 5-6 seconds. Witnesses: Elian Alagri, RN. Gabe Valdez. Edmund, friend of Valdez. Jack, pseudonym, Ph.D. Manuel, local kid. Greg, son of Valdez. Jeff, another son of Valdez. John Gill, Ph.D. Note, Jack would probably be Jason Bishop, which is itself a pseudonym used by a researcher and a friend of mine who uses this pseudonym because of his deep-level research into some very dangerous areas of investigation. That is, if one considers the revelations such as those contained within this volume to be dangerous information under certain circumstances. Branton. Circumstances of sighting. John Gill, was interested in the Dulce area because of rumors related to a jointly CIA alien-occupied underground facility under Mount Archuleta, and to numerous UFO sightings, as reported by local residents. A night of observation in the mountains had been planned under the leadership of Valdez. Since about 7:30 p.m., we had been playing Ouija at the instigation of Valdez. Just as we were processing the last person, one of Valdez's sons shouted, "Look! Here it comes." Note, Gill, do not make the statement that there was a causal correlation between what we had just been doing and what we saw next. I merely report two consecutive events which may or may not have been correlated. Look of the phenomenon. The object came from the south at great speed on a flat, straight, rectilinear, horizontal trajectory resulting in a perfectly straight luminous yellowish line. It was definitely not a plane or a shooting star. There was no sound coming from the object. The object stopped dead in its tracks near the top of the mountain. At the same time, it became extremely luminous, lighting at least half the sky. There was a display of various colors, yellow, pink, green, and a shower of sparks. Then the object folded on itself and disappeared. Annexes. Maps. New Mexico maps. The United States Geological Survey maps. Word Canyon. Photos. Group photo of witnesses. Campsite. Mount Archuleta. The trajectory was about 2,000 feet above the lowest point under the estimated path of the object, which is the Navajo River, elevation 6,600 feet. End. Chapter 3. Dulce, New Mexico, and a Cosmic Conspiracy. John Lear, a captain of a major United States airline, has flown over 160 different types of aircraft in over 50 different countries. He holds 17 world speed records in the Lear jet and is the only pilot ever to hold every airman certificate issued by the Federal Aviation Administration. Mr. Lear has flown missions worldwide for the CIA and other government agencies. He has flown clandestine missions in war zones and hot spots around the world, often engineering hair's breadth escapes under dangerous conditions. A former Nevada state senatorial candidate, he is the son of William P. Lear, designer of the Learjet executive airplane, the 8-track stereo, and founder of the Lear-Siegler Corporation. John Lear became interested in the subject of UFOs 13 months prior to the date given below, after talking with a friend in the United States Air Force by the name of Greg Wilson, who had witnessed a UFO landing at Bentwaters Ave, near London, England, during which 3 small, gray aliens walked up to the wing commander. Since then Lear has tapped his contacts in intelligence, investigating the allegations that the executive and military-industrial branches of the United States government knows about, and colludes with, alien forces. Lear no longer suggests the following scenario is a possibility. He emphatically states that the aliens are here, and that many of them bode us ill. It started after World War II, he begins. We, the Allied forces, recovered some alien technology from Germany. Not all that they had. Some of it disappeared. It appears that sometime in the late '30s, Germany recovered a saucer. What happened to it we don't know. But what we did get was some kind of ray gun. The following is a public statement released by John Lear on December 29, 1987, and revised on March 25, 1988. It was originally sent to some of Lear's personal friends and research associates who in turn put pressure on the ace pilot to release this information publicly. The first version of the statement was apparently meant for the inside crowd of researchers with whom Lear associated, whereas the following revision contains the same information as the first edition, yet is directed towards the public in general. Note to the press: the government of the United States continues to rely on your personal and professional gullibility to suppress the information contained herein. Your cooperation over the past 40 years has exceeded our wildest expectations and we salute you. The sun does not revolve around the earth. The United States government has been in business with little gray extraterrestrials for about 20 years. The first truth stated here got Giordano Bruno right, burned at the stake in AD 1600 for daring to propose that it was real. The second truth has gotten far more people killed trying to state it publicly than will ever be known. Note, emphasis here and throughout this section is ours. Branton, but the truth must be told. The fact that the earth revolves around the sun was successfully suppressed by the Roman Church for over 200 years. It eventually caused a major upheaval in the church, government, and thought. A realignment of social and traditional values. That was in the 1600s. Now, about 400 years after the first truth was pronounced, we must again face the shocking facts. The horrible truth the government has been hiding from us over 40 years. Unfortunately, the horrible truth is far more horrible than the government ever imagined. In its effort to protect democracy, our government sold us to the aliens. And here is how it happened. But before I begin, I'd like to offer a word in defense of those who bargained us away. They had the best of intentions. Germany may have recovered a flying saucer as early as 1939. General James H. Doolittle went to Norway in 1952 to inspect a flying saucer that had crashed there in Spitsbergen. The horrible truth was known by only a very few persons. They were indeed ugly little creatures, shaped like praying mantises. Of the original group that were the first to learn the horrible truth, several committed suicide, the most prominent of which was Defense Secretary and Secretary of the Navy James V. Forrestal, who jumped to his death from a 16th-story hospital window. Note, William Cooper, a former member of a Navy intelligence briefing team, insists that Forrestal was in fact murdered by CIA agents who made his death look like a suicide. Based on sensitive documents Cooper claims to have read, 2 CIA agents entered the hospital room, tied a sheet around Forrestal's neck and to a light fixture, and threw him out the window to hang. The sheet broke and he fell to his death, screaming on his way down. According to some witnesses, "We are being invaded." Branton. Secretary Forrestal's medical records are sealed to this day. President Truman put a lid on the secret and turned the screws so tight that the general public still thinks that flying saucers are a joke. Have I ever got a surprise for them? In 1937, President Truman established a group of 12 of the top military scientific personnel of their time. They were known as MJ-12. Although the group exists today, none of the original members are still alive. The last one to die was Gordon Gray, former Secretary of the Army, in 1984. As each member passed away, the group itself appointed a new member to fill the position. There is some speculation that the group known as MJ-12 expanded to at least 7 more members. There were several more saucer crashes in the late 1940s, one in Roswell, New Mexico, one in Aztec, New Mexico, and one near Laredo, Texas, about 30 miles inside the Mexican border. Consider, if you will, the position of the United States government at that time. They proudly thought of themselves as the most powerful nation on Earth, having recently produced the atomic bomb, an achievement so stupendous, it would take Russia 4 years to catch up, and only with the help of traitors to democracy. They had built a jet aircraft that had exceeded the speed of sound in flight. They had built jet bombers with intercontinental range that could carry weapons of enormous destruction. The post-war era, and the future seemed bright. Now imagine what it was like for those same leaders, all of whom had witnessed the panic of Orson Welles' radio broadcast, The War of the Worlds, in 1938. Thousands of Americans panicked at a realistically presented invasion of Earth by beings from another planet. Imagine their horror as they actually viewed the dead bodies of these frightening little creatures with enormous eyes, reptilian skin and claw-like fingers. Imagine their shock as they attempted to determine how these strange saucers were powered and could discover no part even remotely similar to components they were familiar with, no cylinders or pistons, no vacuum tubes or turbines or hydraulic actuators. It is only when you fully understand the overwhelming helplessness the government was faced with in the late 40s that you can comprehend their perceived need for a total, thorough and sweeping cover-up, to include the use of deadly force. The cover-up was so successful that as late as 1985 a senior scientist with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, Dr. Al Hibbs, would look at a videotape of an enormous flying saucer and state the record. "I'm not going to assign anything to that UFO phenomena without a lot more data." Dr. Hibbs was looking at the naked emperor and saying, single quote, "He certainly looks naked, but that doesn't prove he's naked." In July 1952, a panicked government watched helplessly as a squadron of flying saucers flew over Washington, D.C., and buzzed the White House, the Capitol building, and the Pentagon. It took all the imagination and intimidation the government could muster to force that incident out of the memory of the public. Thousands of sightings occurred during the Korean War, and several more saucers were retrieved by the Air Force. Some were stored at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Some were stored at Air Force bases near the locations of the crash site. One saucer was so enormous and the logistic problems in transportation so enormous that it was buried at the crash site and remains there today. The stories are legendary on transporting crashed saucers over long distances, moving only at night, purchasing complete farms, slashing through forests, blocking major highways, sometimes driving 2 or 3 lowboys in tandem with an extraterrestrial load 100 feet in diameter. Note, it is alleged that Alpha or Blue teams out of Wright-Patterson F were the ones who were most often mobilized to carry out crash retrieval operations. Branton. On April 30, 1964, the first communication occurred between these aliens and the U.S. government. Note, others claim that there was an even earlier contact communication in 1954 during the Eisenhower administration. Branton, during the period of 1969 to 1971, MJ-12 representing the United States government made a deal with these creatures, called EBs, extraterrestrial biological entities, named by Dudley Barong, original MJ-12 member and 6th president of Johns Hopkins University. The deal was that in exchange for technology that they would provide to us, we agreed to ignore the abductions that were going on and suppress information on the cattle mutilations. The EBs assured MJ-12 that the abductions, usually lasting about 2 hours, were merely the ongoing monitoring of developing civilizations. In fact, the purposes for the abductions turned out to be 1. The insertion of a 3 mm spherical device through the nasal cavity of the abductee into the brain, optic and door nerve center. The device is used for the biological monitoring, tracking, and control of the abductee. 2. Implementation of posthypnotic suggestion to carry out a specific activity during a specific time period, the actuation of which will occur within the next 2 to 5 years. 3. Termination of some people so that they could function as living sources for biological material and substances. 4. Termination of individuals WHO represent a threat to the continuation of their activity. 5. Effect genetic engineering experiments. 6. Impregnation of human females and early termination of pregnancies to secure the crossbred infant. Note, or perhaps a better term for it would be a genetically altered infant, since there has been no evidence forthcoming that an actual hybrid between humans and the EB or Grey species has been successful. In other words, the offspring would tend to fall to one side or the other, a reptiloid or Grey entity possessing no soul energy matrix, or a humanoid being possessing such a matrix or soul although somewhat altered genetically in its outward physical appearance or characteristics. Branton. Though the United States government was not initially aware of the far-reaching consequences of their deal, they were led to believe that the abductions were essentially benign, and since they figured that the abductions would probably go on anyway whether they agreed or not, they merely insisted on a current list of abductees be submitted, on a periodic basis, to MJ-12 and the National Security Council. Does this sound incredible? An actual list of abductees sent to the National Security Council. Read on, because I have news for you. The EBs have a genetic disorder in that their digestive system is atrophied and not functional. In order to sustain themselves they use enzyme or hormonal secretions obtained from the tissues that they extract from humans and animals. The secretions obtained are then mixed with hydrogen peroxide to kill germs, viruses, etc., and applied on the skin by spreading or dipping parts of their bodies in the solution. The body absorbs the solution, then excretes the waste back through the skin. Note, urine is also excreted through the skin in this manner, which may explain the ammonia-like stench that many abductees or witnesses have reported during encounters with the Grey-type aliens. Branton. The cattle mutilations that were prevalent throughout the period from 1973 to 1983 and publicly noted through newspaper and magazine stories and included a documentary produced by Linda Howe for a Denver CBS affiliate KMGH-TV, were for the collection of these tissues by the aliens. The mutilations included genitals taken, rectums cored out to the colon, eyes, tongue, and throat all surgically removed with extreme precision. In some cases the incisions were made by cutting between the cells, a process we are not yet capable of performing in the field. In many of the mutilations there was no blood found at all in the carcass, yet there was no vascular collapse of the internal organs. This has also been noted in the human mutilations, one of the first of which was Sergeant Jonathan P. Lovett at the White Sands Missile Test Range in 1956, who was found 3 days after an Air Force major had witnessed his abduction by a disc-shaped object at 0300 while on search for missile debris downrange. His genitals had been removed, rectum cored out in a surgically precise plug up to the colon, eyes removed and all blood removed with, again, no vascular collapse. From some of the evidence it is apparent that this surgery is accomplished, in most cases, while the victim, animal or human, is still alive. Note, according to former Green Beret Commander Bill English, this incident was also mentioned in the above top-secret Grudge/Blue Book Report No. 13, which was never released with the rest of the innocuous and voluminous Project Blue Book reports. The Blue Teams who were sent on crash retrieval operations were reportedly working on behalf of the covert branch of the Blue Book operations, and ufological legend has it that a secret warehouse with multiple underground levels exists at Wright-Patterson FB in Ohio, one which is literally packed with alien craft, hardware, and even alien bodies on ice. Wright-Patterson was, and is, the headquarters of Project Blue Book. Branton, the various parts of the body are taken to various underground laboratories, one of which is known to be near the small New Mexico town of Dulce. This jointly occupied CIA alien facility has been described as enormous, with huge tiled walls that go on forever. Witnesses have reported huge vats filled with amber liquid with parts of human bodies being stirred inside. After the initial agreement, Groom Lake less than JavaScript, getpage zoomifire/esp_grow_mariamap.htm single quote, 773,500? Greater than, one of the nation's most secret test centers, was closed for a period of about a year, sometime between about 1972 and 1974, and a huge underground facility was constructed for and with the help of the IBs. The bargain for technology was set in place but could only be operated by the IBs themselves. Needless to say, the advanced technology could not be used against the IBs themselves, even if needed. During the period between 1979 and 1983 it became increasingly obvious to MJ-12 that things were not going as planned. It became known that many more people in the thousands were being abducted than were listed on the official abduction lists. In addition, it became known that some, not all, but some of the nation's missing children had been used for secretions and other parts required by the aliens. In 1979 there was an altercation of sorts at the Dulce laboratory. A special armed forces unit was called in to try and free a number of our people trapped in the facility. WHO had become aware of what was really going on. According to one source, 66 of the soldiers were killed and our people were not freed. By 1984, MJ-12 must have been in stark terror at the mistake they had made in dealing with the IBs. They had subtly promoted close encounters of the third kind in single quote to get the public used to odd-looking aliens that were compassionate, benevolent and very much our space brothers. MJ-12 sold the IBs to the public, and were now faced with the fact that quite the opposite was true. In addition, a plan was formulated in 1968 to make the public aware of the existence of aliens on Earth over the next 20 years, to be culminated with several documentaries to be released during 1985 to 1987 period of time. These documentaries would explain the history and intentions of the IBs. The discovery of the Grand Deception put the entire plans, hopes and dreams of MJ-12 into utter confusion and panic. Meeting at the country club, a remote lodge with private golf course, comfortable sleeping in working quarters, and its own private airstrip built by and exclusively for the members of MJ-12, it was a factional fight of what to do now. Part of MJ-12 wanted to confess the whole scheme and shambles it had become to the public, beg their forgiveness and ask for their support. The other part, the majority of MJ-12, argued that there was no way they could do that, that the situation was untenable and there was no use in exciting the public with the horrible truth, and that the best plan was to continue the development of a weapon that could be used against the IBs under the guise of SDI, the Strategic Defense Initiative, which had nothing whatsoever to do with the defense for inbound Russian nuclear missiles. As these words are being written, Dr. Edward Teller, father of the H-bomb, is personally in the test tunnels of the Nevada test site, driving his workers and associates in the words of one, like a man possessed. And well he should, for Dr. Teller is a member of MJ-12 along with Dr. Kissinger, Admiral Bobby Inman, and possibly Admiral Poindexter, to name a few of the current members of MJ-12. Before the grand deception was discovered and according to a meticulous plan for metered release of information to the public, several documentaries and videotapes were made. William Moore, a Burbank, California, based UFO researcher who wrote The Roswell Incident, a book published in 1980 that detailed the crash, recovery and subsequent cover-up of a UFO with 4 alien bodies, has a videotape of 2 newsmen interviewing a military officer associated with MJ-12. This military officer answers questions relating to the history of MJ-12 and the cover-up, the recovery of a number of flying saucers and the existence of a live alien, one of 3 living aliens captured and designated, or named, EB-1, EB-2, and EB-3, being held in a facility designated as YY-2 at Los Alamos, New Mexico. The only other facility of this type, which is electromagnetically secure, is at the Edwards Air Force Base in Mojave, California. The officer names as previously mentioned plus a few others, Harold Brown, Richard Helms, General Vernon Walters, JPL's Dr. Allen and Dr. Theodore Van Karman, to name a few of the current and past members of MJ-12. The officer also relates the fact that the EBs claim to have created Christ. The EBs have a type of recording device that has recorded all of Earth's history and can display it in the form of a hologram. This hologram can be filmed, but because of the way holograms work does not come out very clear on movie film or videotape. The crucifixion of Christ on the Mount of Olives, this actually took place on the hill Calvary, not the Mount of Olives, Branton, has allegedly been put on film to show the public. The EBs claim to have created Christ, which, in view of the grand deception, could be an effort to disrupt traditional values for undetermined reasons. Another videotape allegedly in existence is an interview with an EB. Since EBs communicate telepathically via sonic crystalline transceiver-like implants that link the grays together into a mass collective hive mind, Branton, an Air Force colonel, serves as interpreter. Just before the recent stock market correction in October of 1987, several newsmen, including Bill Moore, had been invited to Washington, D.C., to personally film the EB in a similar type interview, and distribute the film to the public. Apparently, because of the correction in the market, it was felt the timing was not propitious. In any case, it certainly seems like an odd method to inform the public of extraterrestrials, but it would be in keeping with the actions of a panicked organization. WHO at this point in time doesn't know which way to turn. Moore is also in possession of more Aquarius documents, a few pages of which leaked out several years ago and detailed the super-secret NSA project, which had been denied by them until just recently. In a letter to Senator John Glenn, NSA's Director of Policy, Julio B. Wetzel, wrote, "Apparently there's or was an Air Force project with the name Aquarius, which dealt with UFOs. Coincidentally, there's also an NSA project by that name. NSA's Project Aquarius deals specifically with communications with the aliens, EBs. Within the Aquarius program was Project Snowbird, a project to test fly a recovered alien aircraft at Groom Lake less than JavaScript, getpage sp_offlimits_3a.htm #1 single quote, 434,524, greater than, Nevada. This project continues today at that location. In the words of an individual who works at Groom Lake, our people are much better at taking things apart than they are at putting them back together." Moore, who claims he has a contact with MJ-12, feels that they have been stringing him along, slipping him documents and providing him with leads, promising to go public with some of the information on extraterrestrials by the end of 1987. Certain of Moore's statements lead one to believe that Moore himself is a government agent working for MJ-12, not to be strung along, but to string along ever hopeful ufologists that the truth is just around the corner. Consider. 1. Moore states emphatically that he's not a government agent, although when Lee Graham, a Southern California-based ufologist, was investigated by DIS, Defense Investigative Service, for possession of classified documents received from Moore, Moore himself was not. 2. Moore states emphatically that the cattle mutilations of 1973 to 1983 were a hoax by Linda Howe, producer of A Strange Harvest, to create publicity for herself. He cites the book Mute Evidence as the bottom line of the hoax. Mute Evidence was a government-sponsored book to explain the mutilations in conventional terms. 3. Moore states that the U.S. Academy Physics book, Introductory Space Science, Volume 2 Chapter 13, entitled Unidentified Flying Objects, which describes 4 of the most commonly seen aliens, one of which is the EB, was written by Lieutenant Colonel Edward Arthur Colson and Major Donald B. Carpenter. Air Force personnel who did not know what they were talking about and were merely citing crackpot references. Moore, states that the book was withdrawn to excise the chapter. If the government felt they were being forced to acknowledge the existence of aliens on Earth because of the overwhelming evidence such as the October and November sightings in Wytheville, Virginia, and recently released books such as Night Siege, Hynek, J. Allen, Imbrogno, Philip J. Pratt, Bob, Night Siege, Ballantine Books, Random House, New York, and taking into consideration the grand deception and obviously hostile intent of the IBs, it might be expedient for MJ-12 to admit the IBs but conceal the information on the mutilations and abductions. If MJ-12 and Moore were in some kind of agreement, then it would be beneficial to Moore to toe the party line. For example, MJ-12 would say, "Here are some more genuine documents. But remember, no talking about the mutilations or abductions." This would be beneficial to Moore as it would supply the evidence to support his theory that ETs exist but deny the truth about the ETs. However, if Moore was indeed working for MJ-12, he would follow the party line anyway, admitting it's but poo-poohing the mutilations and abductions. If working alone, Moore might not even be aware of the grand deception. Time will tell. It is possible that Moore will go ahead and release the video interview with the military officer around the first of the year, as he has promised. From MJ-12's point of view, the public would be exposed to the information without really having to believe it because Moore is essentially not as credible as sources, say, the President of the United States. After a few months of digestion and discussion, a more credible source could emerge with a statement that yes, in fact the interview was essentially factual. This scenario would cushion somewhat the blow to the public. If, however, Moore does not release the tape by, say, February 1st of 1988, but comes instead with a story similar to, MJ-12 has informed me that they are definitely planning a release of all information by October of '88. I have seen the plan and have seen the guarantee that this will happen, so I have decided to withhold the release of my videotape at this time as it may cause some problems with MJ-12's plans. This would in effect buy more time for MJ-12, and time is what they desperately need. Now you ask, haven't I heard any of this? Who do you think you would hear it from? Dan Rather? Tom Brokaw? Sam Donaldson? Wrong. These people just read the news, they don't find it. They have ladies who call and interview witnesses and verify statements on stories coming over the wire, either AP or UPI. It's not like Dan Rather would go down to Wytheville, Virginia, and dig into why there were 4,000 reported sightings in October and November of 1987. Better Tom Brokaw or someone else should risk their credibility on this type of story. Tom Brokaw. Tom wants Sam Donaldson to risk his credibility. No one, is going to risk their neck on such outlandish ideas, regardless of how many people report sightings of 900-foot objects running them off the road. In the case of the Wytheville sightings, dozens of vans with NASA lettered on the side failed to interest newsmen. And those that asked questions were informed that NASA was doing a weather survey. Well then, you ask, what about our scientists? What about Carl Sagan? Isaac Asimov? Arthur C. Clarke? Wouldn't they have known? If Carl Sagan knows, then he is committing a great fraud through the solicitation of memberships in the Planetary Society, to search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Another charade into which the United States government dumps millions of dollars every year is the radio telescope in Arecibo, Puerto Rico, operated by Cornell University with, guess who? Carl Sagan. Cornell is ostensibly searching for signals from outer space, a sign maybe, that somebody is out there. It is hard to believe that relatively intelligent astronomers like Sagan could be so ignorant. Note, also, even if they did find evidence of extraterrestrial life, do you think that SETI and similar government-sponsored projects would tell the United States about it? Let's just take a look at some actual statements from those involved with these projects. The following is a quote from Matt Spetalnik's article, Is Anybody Out There? NASA looks for real ETs, in Reuters magazine, October 5, 1992. At least 70 times scientists have picked up radio waves that bore the marks of communication by beings from other worlds, but they were never verified, Frank Drake said. And researcher John Spencer, in a reference to Dr. Otto Struve, tells how this astrophysicist assisted Frank Drake in establishing Project Ozma, and its very mysterious conclusion. The project began its search by focusing on the star Tau Ceti. According to claims made at the time, As soon as the project got underway, strong intelligent signals were picked up, leaving all the scientists stunned. Abruptly, Dr. Strove then declared Project Ozma had been shut down, and commented that there was no sensible purpose for listening to messages from another world. The UFO Encyclopedia. So then, these insiders will accept all of our hard-earned tax dollars to finance their radio projects, if not their underground bases and covert space operations. Yet cursed be any mere mortal for having the audacity to actually insist on having access to the products of their financial investments. Branton, what about Isaac Asimov? Surely the most prolific science fiction writer of all time would have guessed by now that there must be an enormous cover-up. Maybe, but if he knows, he's not saying. Perhaps he's afraid that Foundation and Empire will turn out to be inaccurate. What about Arthur C. Clarke? Surely the most technically accurate of science fiction writers with very close ties to NASA would have at least a hint of what's really going on. Again, if so, he isn't talking. In the recent science fiction survey, Clarke estimates that contact with extraterrestrial intelligent life would not occur before the 21st century. If the government won't tell us the truth and the major networks won't even give it serious consideration, note, this was written before such programs as Sightings, Encounters, Unsolved Mysteries, Current Affair, Montel Williams, Strange Universe and other TV news digests and talk shows did begin dealing with the UFO phenomena, abductions, and so on in much greater depth, not to mention the X-Files, Dark Skies and other TV series. Branton, then what is the big picture, anyway? Are the ABs, having done 100,000 or more abductions, possibly millions worldwide, built an untold number of secret underground bases, Groom Lake, Nevada, Sunspot, Dulce, Roswell, and Pie Town, New Mexico, just to name a few, getting ready to return to wherever they came from? Or, from the obvious preparations, are we to assume that they are getting ready for a big move? Or is it the more sinister and most probable situation that the invasion is essentially complete and it is all over but the screaming? A well-planned invasion of Earth for its resources and benefits would not begin with mass landings or ray-gun-equipped aliens. A properly planned and executed invasion by a civilization thousands of years in advance of us would most likely be complete before a handful of people, say 12, realized what was happening. No fuss, no mess. The best advice I can give you is this: next time you see a flying saucer and are awed by its obvious display of technology and gorgeous lights of pure color, run like hell. June 3, 1988, Las Vegas, Nevada. The following was an addendum to the above that was included with later copies of John Lear's statement. In 1983, when the Grand Deception was discovered, MJ-12, which may now be designated P-40 single quote, started work on a weapon or some kind of device to contain the ABs which had by now totally infested our society. This program was funded through SD, which, coincidentally, was initiated at approximately the same date. A frantic effort has been made over the past 4 years by all participants. This program ended in failure in December of 1987. Note, British ufologist Timothy Good claimed that over 22 British scientists, who were working on the United States D program for British Marconi and other aerospace companies, had all mysteriously died or committed suicide within the space of a few years. Could this have had anything to do with this failure? Apparently someone out there was intent on sabotaging this D/Star Wars project. Also, there are reports that several of our defense satellites have been destroyed as well. Branton. A new program has been conceived but will take about 2 years to develop. In the meantime, it is absolutely essential to MJ-12, Pi-40, that no one, including the Senate, the Congress or the citizens of the United States of America or anyone else for that matter, become aware of the real circumstances surrounding the UFO cover-up and total disaster it has become. Moore never did release the videotapes, but claims he is negotiating with a major network to do so soon. Another source added the following statements in regards to Lear's claims: Area 51 and a similar setup near Dulce, New Mexico, may now belong to forces not loyal to the United States government, or even the human race. It's horrifying to think that all the scientists we think are working for us in the Joint Interaction Bases are actually controlled by aliens. SD, regardless of what you hear, was completed to shoot down incoming saucers. The mistake was that we thought they were coming inbound. In fact, they're already here. They're in underground bases all over the place. It seems that the aliens had constructed many such bases without our knowledge, where they conduct heinous genetic experiments on animals, human beings, and improvised creatures of their own devising. Thus was born Project Excalibur. Press reports described Excalibur as a weapons system designed to obliterate deeply buried Soviet command centers, which the Reagan administration hypocritically characterized as destabilizing. We have exactly similar centers. Lear claims the weapon was actually directed toward the internal alien threat. Unfortunately, the visitors have invaded us in more ways than one. Millions of Americans have been implanted. There's a little device that varies in size from 50 microns to 3 millimeters. It is inserted through the nose into the brain. It effectively controls the person. Dr. J. Allen Hynek estimated in 1972 that 1 in every 40 Americans was implanted. We believe it may be as high as 1 in 10 now. These implants will be activated at some time in the near future, for some unspecified alien purpose. When Lear was pressed to disclose some of his sources, he stated that his anonymous intelligence informants go right to the top. He did however mention some of the names and not-so-sensitive intelligence positions from whom he has also gathered information. Many of these names may be familiar to veteran ufologists. These include, Paul Benoitz, Director of Thunder Scientific Laboratories, a New Mexico-based research facility with government contract ties, who claims to have gained access to and interrogated an alien computer system via a radio-video computer setup of his own invention. Linda Howe, the television documentarian responsible for Strange Harvest, a program about cattle mutilations, who received astonishing leaks from a special intelligence officer, Colonel Richard Doty, formerly of Kirtland FB, a name noted in area research circles. Robert Collins, codenamed Condor, according to Lear, who has secured numerous official documents relating to UFOs. Sergeant Clifford Stone, premier collector of UFO-related Freedom of Information Act or FOIA documents. Travis Walton, professed UFO abductee whose experience inspired the movie Fire in the Sky. As an interesting follow-up to Lear's article, we quote here some actual statements made by prominent individuals in regards to the UFO phenomenon. In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside, universal threat to make us realize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our differences would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among the United States? President Ronald Reagan. Remarks made to the 42nd General Assembly of the United Nations. September 21, 1987. I couldn't help but say to him, Gorbachev, just think how easy his task and mine might be in these meetings that we held if suddenly there was a threat to this world from some other species from another planet outside in the universe. Well, I don't suppose we can wait for some alien race to come down and threaten us. But I think that between us we can bring about that realization. President Ronald Reagan. Remarks to Falston High School students and faculty, Falston, M.D. October 4, 1985. For your confidential information, a reliable and confidential source has advised the Bureau that flying discs are believed to be man-made missiles rather than natural phenomenon. It has also been determined that for approximately the past 4 years the USSR has been engaged in experimentation on an unknown type of flying disc. FBI memo, dated March 25, 1949, sent to a large number of FBI offices. Unidentified flying objects. The panel recommends that the National Security Agency's institute policies, designed to prepare the material defenses and the morale of the country to recognize and react most effectively to true indications of hostile measures. Recommendation of the CIA Robertson Panel on UFOs. January, 1953. Public interest in disclosure is far outweighed by the sensitive nature of the materials and the obvious effect on national security their release may entail. The United States District Court opinion in the case of Citizens Against UFO Secrecy versus the National Security Agency. May 18, 1982. The sums made available to the agency may be expended without regard to the provisions of law and regulations relating to the expenditures of government. Central Intelligence Act of 1949. On this land a flying disc has been found intact, with 18 3-foot-tall human-like occupants, all dead in it but not burned. FBI memo from New Orleans Branch to Director, FBI, March 31, 1950 about a disc found in the Mojave Desert in January, 1950. When 4 sit down to conspire, 3 are fools and the 4th is a government agent. Duncan Lunat. The flying discs are real. General Nathan Twining. According to Mr. Invisement, the saucers were found in New Mexico due to the fact that the government has a very high-powered radar set up in that area, and it is believed that the radar and beams interferes with the controlling mechanism of the saucers. Each one of the 3 saucers were occupied by 3 bodies of human shape, but only 3 feet tall, dressed in metallic cloth of a very fine texture. FBI memo from Agent Guy Hoddle. Washington Field Office. Sent to Director, FBI. March 22, 1950. I would say that we know of several, should we say, intergalactic fights that have taken place, dogfights. United States Army Sergeant Clifford Stone, Roswell, New Mexico Station. He believes that because of the developments of science all the countries on Earth will have to unite to survive and to make a common front against attack by people from other planets. Mayor Achille Lauro of Naples, quoting General Douglas MacArthur in the New York Times, Saturday, October 8, 1955. P.7. Chapter 4. Dulce, New Mexico and the Nazi Connection. Researcher Jim Bennett, in a letter to Jacques Vallée dated January 15, 1992, made some startling disclosures in regards to the alien situation and the Dulce, New Mexico base in particular. It is my belief that even if there is a fascist CIA cabal trying to establish a world dictatorship using the threat of an alien invasion to foment world government, that the threat may be real all the same. It is also possible that the Bavarians may be working with very real aliens and an endgame designed to establish a world government using this threat as an excuse to do so, although when the world is under their control the Illuminati may betray the human race by turning much of the global government control system over to the gray aliens, the beast. The aliens may have been collaborating with the Bavarians for a very long time as part of their agenda to implement absolute electronic control over the inhabitants of planet Earth. One source, an Area 51 worker, and member of a secret naval intelligence group called Com-12, by the name of Michael Younger, stated that the Bavarian black nobility secret societies have agreed to turn over 3/4 of the planet to the Greys if they could retain 25% for themselves and have access to alien mind control technology. The aliens would assist in the abduction, programming and implanting of people throughout the world in preparation for a new world order, which in turn would be annexed to the alien empire. Apparently some top-echelon Bavarians have agreed to this, since they realize that they need the alien mind control and implant technology in order to carry out their plans for world domination. In his lengthy letter, Jim Bennett, director of the research organization Planet Com, writes, 1947 brought the passage of the National Security Act, the start of the Nazi-germinated CIA and NSA. The influx of at least 100 Nazi scientists, engineers, etc., into the United States and Canada. Note, other sources claim that eventually over 3,000 Nazi SS agents entered the United States in this manner. Not former Nazis but active Nazi SS who still maintained the National Socialist philosophy and agendas which they intended to carry through on to their planned conclusion. They were given refuge within the military-industrial complex with the help of members of the Bavarian-based Black Gnostic, serpent-worshipping, lodges in America, such as the Jesuit-spawned Scottish Rite and related lodges who control the oil military-industrial complex. The leaders of the military-industrial complex, or MIC, not only gave these fascists refuge following the war, but also had financed the Nazi war machine itself during the Second World War. Branton, a Nazi aeronautical engineer, a certain Hermiath, who had designed 4 different types of saucer-shaped craft by 1943 using either rocket power or donut configuration jet turbine engines, with the cabin stabilized by gyro, the compressors rotating in one direction and the expansion chambers and vectored exhausts rotating in the opposite direction, was traced to Canada in 1937 and began work for the Avro company, Avro Disc. The phony Avro aircar was definitely to disinform the press as to the real projects underway underground in Canada. The 8-mile-long train that went out of Austria in 1945, 672 train cars, to the coast of Brittany, the contents loaded on board ships, eventually ended up underground in southwestern Canada. At the same time over 100 prefab factory buildings were shipped from England to British Columbia. The Nazis had everything before any other country. They had radar in 1933, they had infrared sensors, heavy water, etc., etc. We have been told lie after lie in terms of who invented these things. If anyone in the world had access to alien technology, it was the Aryans, Nazis. Their metallurgy and casting were flawed or they would have conquered the world. As you probably know, many expatriate Nazis were given carte blanche, new IDs, and were included in the startup of more than several departments of the CIA in 1947. Departments including genetics and cloning, with some of the same doctors who had given death camp residents gangrene, etc. Designer drugs and mind control using the same scientists who had designed methadone and mephedrine for Hitler's maniac efforts. In 1952, a public stir caused the CIA to shuffle these fab fellows out of town. My guess is to various underground centers that were being built. I have talked to Paul Bennewitz at length, several times. On his behalf, you only tell people how they drove him nuts, not why. I asked myself, why would you leave out that reason why they sent him reeling? Here Bennett is addressing Jacques Vallée concerning his book, Revelations. Branton, to fill you in, because you obviously took Linda Howe's and Tracy's opinion rather than questioning Paul directly. He's a pilot, he flew over the Dulce area numerous times on his way between Albuquerque and Denver. He took many pictures of the construction going on, and according to Paul, he also took pictures of circular craft on the ground at this site which, as late as 1973 according to him, had large hangar doors much the same as Lazar's second-hand explanation about the doors at S4. All the stuff from Area 51 ends for single quote having to do with inertial mass cancellation was moved to an area near St. George, Utah. The most revealing photos and their negatives disappeared in about 1975 when various fringe UFO experts visited Paul. Also, his house was burglarized and ransacked more than once. In later years Moore, Chandra, and Turm made a meaningless tour of Dulce when they went on to Albuquerque, the real reason for their travels, to see if there was any more evidence of serious consequence still in Paul's possession that they could grab, and sure enough, he was missing some photos when they left his house. If you even talked to Bennewitz, you would have gotten a lot closer to having a revelation. The waste from the underground biogenetic lab, no aliens involved, although that is where we humans produce the short-lived, big-eyed, big-headed imitation aliens, comes out in the river canyon about 10 miles below Navajo Dam. Note, an alternative scenario to the above would be that reptiloid gray aliens are involved, as well as biogenetically constructed beings developed by Illuminati-thal CIA-backed scientists working in the Dulce facility, Branton, although these days they treat it a lot more before letting their gray water back into the environment. This base and others are of course connected by tunnels to Los Alamos. The Arcoleta Mesa installation rivals Pine Gap at Alice Springs, Australia for security, etc. Every United States Air Force base has a so-called bolt hole and is connected to this bolt hole by tunnel. A group of 21 people led by an individual we will call Rick, went to Area 51 in 1989 in a small bus to watch saucers. They were stopped on Mailbox Road by two individuals carrying automatic weapons and wearing camouflage togs. One individual popped a can of gas in the aisle of the bus, and that's all for 3 hours. When they came to their senses, they cut their trip short, returned to Louisiana, and 5 persons got separately regressed using hypnotic regressors that did not know one another, and found that during the lost time their memories had repressed similar events. They had been marched off the bus, taken in jeeps to a building nearby, and had their lives threatened by military personnel. In the United States, the group that runs the alien abduction scam can only use some of the hardiest of these short-lived biogenetic bad luck stories. Short-lived because they have no digestive tract and can survive only about 2 weeks maximum after they are removed from the growing matrix. Then they deteriorate and die. They have no soul and are not considered sentient beings by Tibetan Buddhists. Note, one might ask, why would they bother? The reptilian greys, the cloned branch, although in addition to the clones there are also apparently the polyembryons and egg layers, reportedly have no digestive tract and thus intake food and excrete waste through the skin. Jim Bennett may have just assumed that, since they have no digestive tract they had no way of taking in food, and that they were there for government creations which die after 2 weeks of starving. We grant however that Bennett is right in that, according to the Dulce papers, human and cattle DNA may be used to develop almost humans, and other unnatural living forms. Branton? The Army's mind control unit must take well-deserved credit for the veterans who seemingly go suddenly crazy, killing many people and then themselves. The most recent event in Killeen, Texas was planned for the day before a congressional vote on gun control, hoping to influence Congress with yet another mass automatic killing. Handlers, psychiatrists at each perpetrator's local veterans hospital are involved in each and every case of these mass killings/suicides. Prozac is also involved with each case having been prescribed by the aforementioned handlers in each and every case. The fellow in Canada who killed 12 women at a women's college, the fellow in Stockton, California schoolyard, etc. etc. Further comments on German Bavarian Nazism, the CIA, the New World Order, etc. Sirhan, the man who was convicted of murdering Senator Robert Kennedy, had a psychiatrist by the name of Dr. Diamond who maintained CIA fascist connections. Also Sirhan's attorney Grant Cooper, who seemingly made very little effort to defend Sirhan, had CIA fascist ties as well, leading some to believe that Sirhan was used as a hypno-programmed Manchurian candidate by a fascist cabal, a cabal that murdered not only Robert Kennedy but also his brother President John F. Kennedy as well. Following World War II, over 2,000 German immigrants to the United States became members of the American Psychiatric Association, which was involved in gun control lobbying. In light of the collaboration between the Bavarian Thule Society and the Bavarian Illuminati, and the influx of Thule-backed fifth-column Nazi SS agents into the United States intelligence, with the help of Illuminati-backed oil barons like the German immigrant Aryan supremacist Rockefellers and their corporate oil chemical empires, Exxon, Arco, Zapata, etc., and in light of the deadly intent of both Bavarian societies to establish a New World Order, as Adolf Hitler laid out in his second book, The New World Order, one has to wonder why so many German nationals would join an association that dealt directly with the study of people's minds. This is not to say that Germans themselves are to blame, it is rather the German Bavarian fascists who are behind the New World Order agenda, and especially the Satanist Germanic black nobility families who claim direct descent from the early leaders of the unholy Roman Empire of Germany, which rose from the remnant of the Roman Empire and which kept Europe in an iron grip throughout the Dark Ages. These were the 13 families who had ruled vast financial empires in Europe for nearly 1,500 years. They are once again trying to take control of the world as they attempted to do with World Wars I and II, provoke a global war that will result in the massive single-quote depopulation of blacks, Asians, Jews, Slavs, and many others, excepting of course for the Aryan elite class. In essence they intend to finish what Adolf Hitler set out to accomplish. The threat then is from Nazism or National Socialism, whether it be European, British or American, or whether it be political, corporate or occult National Socialism. Some have reported that the sudden fall of the Soviet states and the Berlin Wall was planned in advance as part of an agenda to merge the East and the West into a so-called communist socialist/democratic socialist New World Order. East and West Berlin would be at the forefront for the reunification of Eastern and Western Europe and in turn, they hope, the rest of the world. Germany has also led the way for European unification by establishing an open border policy and encouraging other European countries to do the same. This may sound benign on the outside, but considering the facts it may be a ruse to unify Europe under German control, which was also Adolf Hitler's goal. However, in this case the unification is being accomplished through economic means rather than military means. The control is still in Germany, but it is more subtle. The Third Reich established German military control of Europe. The European Economic Community or EC established economic control. In most cases, in this world it is the economic forces which control governments. Sad, but true. Notice how the term economic has now been removed, and the New World Order has been renamed the European Community. Very clever. In other words, the unification is no longer just along economic lines, but is becoming increasingly political, since the member nations have been pressured into submitting to an EC constitution along more than mere economic lines. France and England have been pulled into this alliance, in spite of two devastating world wars with the very country that is secretly orchestrating the EC or the New World Order. Come on, France and England, wake up. Germany is not only the largest federated state in the EC, but in 1990 was the largest economic power in the world, with a trade surplus totaling over $58 billion. With almost no foreign currency reserves in 1949, Germany had accumulated nearly $80 billion in reserves by 1989, compared with the $38 billion in the USA and $41 billion in Great Britain. A rather incredible comeback for a country that had waged 2 world wars for the sole purpose of offensive conquest, wars that had cost the Allies a heavy price in blood and resources. Of course, Germany is also the leading economic power in the EC as well, possessing 35% of the economic power base of the European community according to the Grolier Encyclopedia. So just where does the real power lie in the EC/N? W. O. Considering that the German black nobility were the same ones who sent Vladimir Lenin from Germany to Russia to start the communist revolution, and the same powers who backed Adolf Hitler, then it is not surprising that communist East Germany would merge into democratic West Germany with such ease. It should not be surprising, therefore, to learn that German troops in the United States and Canada play a major role in the planned invasion of North America under the cover of a United Nations emergency action. Lenin himself revealed the ultimate goal of the communist agenda, on behalf of the Bavarian elite whom he served. Communism, like democracy, was supposed to give control of the government to the people. But of course Lenin altered the plan a little bit, just as the largely unelected appointed executive branch of the American government altered the rules of democracy, and stated that he did not believe that the common people could handle the responsibility of directing the communist revolution, so a select group of individuals trained in the communist philosophy would carry out this responsibility instead. And wouldn't you know it, many of these people who ended up as the leaders of the communist revolution were handpicked by the German immigrant, capitalist, Rockefeller family themselves. Oh, what a tangled web we weave. The Bavarian cultists who were really running the show would of course be the we that Lenin refers to in the following quote: "First we will take Russia, next we will capture the nations of Eastern Europe, then we will take the masses of Asia. Finally, we will surround the United States, and that last bastion of freedom will fall into our hands like overripe fruit." A likely scenario that some have suggested would be an orchestrated global economic collapse, blamed on Americans of course, which would be followed by fomented anarchy in American cities, followed by sudden nuclear strikes on strategic military bases on the east and west coasts, followed by a Chinese invasion of the west coast, a Russian invasion via Alaska, and a United Nations/German invasion via the east and northeast coasts of the USA. All of those countries who believe that by accepting a flawed socialist political agenda from another country, Germany, in order to supplement their own nation and cultural integrity are sadly mistaken. Collaborating with a Bavarian-backed United Nations New World Order agenda can only lead to the death of your independence as a nation, the death of your culture and history, and the death of your children who were sent to fight and die for the sake of a global government, its Bavarian Antarctican masters, and in turn their draconian allies who are just waiting with greedy claws to take hold of this planet once they have succeeded in getting us to kill each other off to the point where they can move right in and take over with little human resistance. Chapter 5. Report from a Japanese television crew. Norio Hayakawa is the head of the Civilian Intelligence Network, P.O. Box 599. Gardena, California, 80248. Mr. Hayakawa was one of several individuals, including a Japanese film crew from the Nippon Television Network in Japan, who witnessed and videotaped a flight maneuver of a brightly lit orange-yellowish light making extremely unorthodox flight patterns, including sudden acceleration, descension and ascension, possibly exerting a force of multiple Gs under extremely limited space and time, and even zigzag-type movements, while on a field trip to an area just outside of Area 51 single quote in Nevada on Wednesday, February 21, 1990. There were approximately 25 to 28 individuals in the group who also witnessed the display. His brother-in-law Tsuro Isakawa also photographed the object as it was in flight. With over 30 years of in-depth UFO investigative experience, Norio was instrumental in the subsequent production of a 2-hour documentary program televised throughout Japan on March 24, 1990. The entire program dealt with Area 51 and also the crew's pursuit of an alleged biogenetics laboratory in New Mexico, that is, the Dulce facility. It is his contention that what could only be described as highly intelligent and deceptive ultra-dimensional entities materializing in disguise as aliens are collaborating with a secret world government that is preparing, barring unexpected circumstances, Branton to ingeniously stage a contact landing to bring about a new world order. Note, this alien-Bavarian collaboration is apparently feigning animosity with one another by pushing for global government so that the world can join together to fight the aliens. As in Vietnam and Korea, where the socialist leaders of the United Nations organization were playing both sides of the chessboard, any war waged by the New World Order against the Greys will no doubt be a no-win conflict that will only serve to reduce the population of the planet, which is after all part and parcel of the overall draconian Bavarian global agenda. Another possibility that has been suggested is that the Greys will be made out to be the good guys who need our help to break free from the tall reptiloids and their empire, which had conquered them in the past, or vice versa. Actually, the collaboration between the reptiloids and Greys has been undertaken with the full consent of both sides, and behind the scenes the collectivist reptiloids, the insectoids, the Greys and the Bavarian secret society lodges are all working together. Many scenarios are possible. However, the important thing to remember is that any war waged against the reptilian Greys, which threatens the American Declaration of Independence, the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights, is merely playing into the hands of the aliens either way you look at it. International cooperation in a common defense against an alien threat should be considered so long as the national sovereignty of individual nations are not violated in the process. All nations should learn to be self-supporting and not be tempted to succumb to a global economic system, and therefore a global political system, in that money and politics are more or less synonymous. At least in this world where those who control the money control the governments. Also, independent economies will prevent all nations from falling like dominoes if an economic collapse does occur. The target of any future attacks against an outside threat to a nation's security should not be excluded only to the aliens nor exclusively against the human conspirators or tyrants, but the target of any future conflict with one or the other, in regards to planetary or national defense, should be directed specifically at those areas where collaboration and interaction between the alien infiltrators and the human collaborators are taking place. For instance, areas such as the underground joint interaction bases of Neuschwabenland, Antarctica, Pine Gap _Javascript, getpage esp_off-limits_image 7.htm single quote, 537,412, greater than, Australia, Alsace-Lorraine MTS, area of France Germany, and of course and probably by far the worst of all, the underground mega-complex below Dulce, New Mexico, where the worst life forms this universe has to offer seemingly congregate, conceive and carry out their atrocities against their victims, or those who have been taken or abducted to the base permanently, as well as against their implanted programmed victims beyond the confines of the base who are nevertheless forced to exist in psychological concentration camps imposed on them against their will by the collaboration. Branton. Furthermore, Norio Hayakawa contends that the Grand Deception will immediately follow a rapid series of shocking, incredible events in succession, beginning with a Russia-backed Arab Confederacy's attempt to invade Israel, simultaneous worldwide earthquakes, worldwide stock market crash and a sudden, mysterious evacuation of a segment of the planet's population, all of which will culminate in a quick official formation of a new world order based in Europe that will last for 7 years upon its inception. Note, it is interesting that George Washington's famous vision at Valley Forge accurately predicted the Revolutionary and Civil Wars and their outcome, and also a third trial through which America must pass. An air, ground and sea invasion of the Americas by a world order which will have conquered all of Asia, Africa and Europe. Depending on how one interprets the prophecies of Revelation, this siege will last for either 3½ or 7 years, and will end with an American victory aided by divine intervention. I personally believe that America is the wilderness spoken of in the 12th chapter of the book of Revelation. Since the world empire will last no longer than 7 years according to the books of Daniel and Revelation, the invasion/siege of America must also not exceed 7 years, although I suspect that it will be closer to 3½ years. Also, Washington's vision combined with other prophetic sources seem to imply that those who are living west of the Mississippi River at this time will be far better off than those in the occupied zone east of the Mississippi. If General Washington's vision was accurate, then the ultimate outcome of the battle is not the question. The real question is how many Americans, North Central South Americans, will survive through to the final victory. Branton. Norio also explains that the Grand Deception and the shocking series of events will put millions and millions of people worldwide in an absolute stupor for months, during which time a special, extremely effective, multi-leveled mind control program will be activated to calm down the stunned populace. Hayakawa has himself appeared on Japanese television, has lectured considerably, has appeared on a radio station in Phoenix, Arizona, and has been the subject of an article in the Arizona Republic, has published articles in U.S. Japanese Business News. March 1990, was the guest on a Japanese talk show in March and April of 1990, and also appeared on The Billy Goodman Happening on VEG of Las Vegas several times in early 1990, and in 1995 made dramatic appearances on Art Bell's Dreamland broadcast. He was also interviewed on The Anthony J. Hillier Show on Radio Free America, aired in Anchorage, Alaska, during all of which he spoke extensively about his interesting beliefs concerning the origin and nature of UFOs. In a letter dated January 28, 1991, Norio added the following comments concerning the Dulce facility and its possible connection with the mystery of iniquity of Bible prophecy. I've been to Dulce with the Nippon Television Network crew and interviewed many people over there, and came back with the firm conviction that something was happening around 10 to 15 years ago over there, including nightly sightings of strange lights and appearances of military jeeps and trucks. And I am convinced that the Four Corners area is a highly occult area. The only stretch of highway, namely Highway 666, runs through the Four Corners area from southeast Arizona to northwestern New Mexico and up and into SW Colorado and SE Utah. I have also heard that this Highway 666 came into existence around 1947 or 1948, fairly close to the time of 1947, the modern-day beginning of overt UFO appearance, that is the Kenneth Arnold incident, and coincidentally or not, the establishment of Israel in 1948. Norio believes that the establishment of the Nation of Israel in 1948 began the countdown to the final apocalypse, see Revelation chapter 12, for instance. Branton. The following is a transcript of parts of a speech presented by Mr. Hayakawa at the 11th Los Angeles Whole Life Expo held at the Los Angeles Airport Hilton Convention Center on November 16 and 17, 1991. The transcript from which we will quote is a revised and expanded version of the address or lecture written on June of 1992 entitled, UFOs, the Grand Deception and the Coming New World Order. Area 51 is located in the northeastern corner of a vast, desolate stretch of land known as the Nevada Test Site, a large portion of which includes the Nellis Air Force Test Range, but has practically nothing to do with underground nuclear testing. It is located approximately 125 miles north-northwest of Las Vegas and consists of Groom Lake and the Papoose Lake complexes. The presently expanding eastern portion of the latter complexes is known as the S4 site. This entire area is under the strictest control of Airspace R4808N with unlimited ceiling, prohibiting any entry therein of air traffic, civilian or military, unless special clearance for such entry is secured well in advance. By land, the area is meticulously patrolled 24 hours a day by several tiers of external security, even though it is conveniently covered by the Jumbo Hills, which cover north of the Papoose Lake area, making it virtually impossible for anyone to see the facilities without first climbing atop the hills of the rugged mountain range, which became off-limits to the public since 1985. The main external perimeter security is now being handled by Wackenhut Special Securities Division, part of the operations of Wackenhut Corporation, a worldwide semi-private security firm based in Coral Gables, Florida, which has an exclusive contract with the United States Department of Energy and handles not only the perimeter security at the Nevada Test Site, but also at many other secret facilities and sensitive installations throughout the United States and the United States interests worldwide, including ground-level perimeters for several large underground facilities in and around Edwards Air Force Base in Southern California. It is also important to mention that dozens of unmanned, miniature-sized remote-controlled automatic security vehicles constantly patrol the immediate perimeters of the S4 site, located around and presently expanding particularly towards the eastern portion of Papoose Lake. These automatic, miniature-sized four-wheel vehicles have been produced by Sandia Laboratories of Albuquerque, New Mexico exclusively for the Department of Energy. The outer northeastern perimeters of this area located in the Ticaboo Valley come under the geographical jurisdiction of Lincoln County and are relegated to the Bureau of Land Management (BLM). Yet it is considered highly inadvisable for anyone to even enter the main country dirt road, known as the Groom Road, which begins its southwestern extension towards Groom Lake from a point midway between mile marker 34 and 33 on Highway 375, and leads to the guard shack located 2.5 miles northeast of the Groom Lake complexes. The first line of exterior security forces, dressed in military-type camouflage uniforms but with no insignia of any kind whatsoever, consists of the GP patrols, the Groom Proper patrols, in Bronco-type four-wheel drive vehicles who sometimes drive around at night with their lights off on various country dirt roads adjacent to the outer demilitarized zone, intimidating any civilian vehicle that tries to enter those access roads off of Highway 375 located on public land. The GP patrols themselves, part of Wakanot Special Securities Division, however, are strictly ordered to avoid any direct contact with civilians. They are only instructed to radio the Lincoln County Sheriff immediately should anyone be spotted driving on any of those dirt roads. The most common radio frequency used between Security Control and Lincoln County Sheriff's patrols is 138.306 MHz. The only area allowed by the sheriff for such curiosity seekers to congregate is an open area near a black mailbox located at the south side of Highway 375 between mile marker 29 and 30. Even then, the sheriff patrol will routinely stop by during the evening to check on the cars parked at the mailbox area. Moreover, it is our understanding, based on information provided by a highly reliable source connected to a special United States Navy SEAL Operations Center, that the mailbox area is constantly being monitored by high-powered, state-of-the-art, infrared telescopes set up at a facility known as Security Control high atop Bald Mountain, 10 miles west of the area, the highest peak in the Groom Mountain Range. It was precisely at 4:45 a.m. on the morning of Thursday, April 16, 1992, that an NBC News crew, dispatched to the area to report on the landing of an alleged super spy plane known as Aurora on Groom Lake, accidentally succeeded in videotaping the first flight, which we have been calling the Old Faithful, of a mysterious object while standing at the mailbox area and looking due south toward Jumbled Hills. The footage, taken with a night scope vision camera, was broadcast nationally on NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw on April 20, 1992. The NBC News reported that it had videotaped a test flight of a new United States aerial craft that had definitely defied the laws of physics, and that the news team may thus have taken the first glimpse of the other deep black projects, aside from the Aurora project, being conducted within the confines of the top-secret facility. Also in regards to the ongoing program, it is to be noted that usually a day or two prior to significant test flights, that is, only if the test flight is a significant one, by whatever measure known only to the installation, a vehicle traffic counter is laid on Highway 93, at approximately a mile and a half north of Ash Springs, right before the juncture of Highway 375. The other counter is set up about a half mile or so west upon entering Highway 375. The obvious question is, in such desolate, less traveled areas of Nevada, why should there be such traffic counters installed on undivided, lonely highways? It is now my belief that the number of cars being registered that head out west on Highway 375 at such times, particularly in clusters, such as caravans, is relayed to several of the security posts at Area 51, including the main observation post high atop the previously mentioned Bald Mountain. However, it is very possible that they may now have more sophisticated devices for registering the number of vehicles going through the area. The February 21, 1990 expedition was instrumental in the subsequent production of a 2-hour documentary program entitled Saturday Super Special, televised throughout Japan on March 24, 1990, which was seen by more than 28 million viewers on prime time. The entire program dealt with Area 51 and also the crew's pursuit of an alleged biogenetics laboratory thought to be located just outside of Dulce, a tiny town in northwestern New Mexico, about 95 miles northwest of Los Alamos. The United States Naval Research Laboratory seems to have a parapsychology research unit that coordinates its research activities with DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. It is my understanding that some of their activities conducted under the auspices of the Office of Naval Intelligence are being held at locations such as Area 51. ALF, extremely low-frequency, wave-emitting devices, scalar machines, electromagnetic beam weapons, and highly defined hologramic projections are just a few examples of the many new types of mind control weaponry that the government seems to have developed in the past 3 decades or so. Newest researches on special types of hallucinatory and memory-tampering drugs are part of a growing arsenal that the United States Naval Intelligence boasts to have developed in its own parapsychology, mind control unit. According to recent information provided to me by a highly reliable informant within a Special Operations Group of the Department of the Navy, DON, 2 of the most widely used devices will be RHIC, radio hypnotic intracerebral control, and EDOM, electronic dissolution of memory. The first of the 2, radio hypnotic intracerebral control, calls for the implantation of a very small, electronic, micro-radio receiver. It acts as a stimulator which will stimulate a muscle or electronic brain response. This, in turn, can set off a hypno-programmed cue in the victim or subject, which would elicit a preconditioned behavior. The second one, electronic dissolution of memory, calls for remotely controlled production within the brain of acetylcholine, which blocks transmission of nerve impulses in the brain, which results in a sort of selective amnesia. According to this source, in the hands of certain units within the intelligence community, both of these methods are already beginning to be used. An amazing article appeared in the Los Angeles Times on May 12, 1992, announcing that Caltech scientists have recently discovered and confirmed the presence of tiny magnetic particles in the brains of humans, similar to those that have heretofore been found in other animals. Louisiana Times, section, page 3. According to the Caltech researchers, it is now an undeniable fact that every human brain contains a tiny natural magnetite particle, even from the time of conception. Could the government, particularly the United States Naval Research Laboratory, have known this fact for a long time? The answer definitely seems to be in the affirmative. It is interesting also to note that as of this writing, many strange, turquoise-colored antenna towers, with triangular configurations on top, are beginning to be constructed along key areas near the freeway systems of many of the United States cities, particularly proliferating the Los Angeles and Orange County areas of California. According to several reports, these antenna towers are presently being used as relay towers for the increasing networks of cellular telephone systems and are being operated by such firms as Pacific Bell and Telesys. Yet the most interesting aspect of the constructions of these strange antenna towers is that there are increasing reports that the Department of Defense is somehow involved in this operation. The frequency waves being utilized in the cellular telephone communications are, according to several researchers, strikingly close to the range of frequency waves used in several alpha emission and microwave experiments of the United States Naval Research Laboratory as well as DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. Will these towers be utilized throughout the nation? In the meantime, government-sponsored genetics researchers and biotechnology experts at New Mexico's Los Alamos National Laboratory are said to be conducting in-depth studies not only on the total effects of mind control upon human behavioral patterns, but also on its possible applications relative to such areas as genetics engineering and exploration of the human genome. This may be of special interest considering the news in early 1997 out of Edinburgh, Scotland, of the successful cloning of an adult ewe lamb. There are some who contend that certain technological breakthroughs are allowed to leak out into the public domain only after that technology has been harnessed and used for years by the secret scientific fraternities who serve the agendas of the military-industrial elite. It is interesting that following the announcement of this discovery, a Jesuit priest made the rounds on the talk shows defending this new science and advocating the various benefits that it could provide. It is interesting that Adam Weishaupt, who founded the Bavarian Illuminati, was a Jesuit. And it is also interesting that the Scottish Rite of Masonry originally had its origin within the Jesuit College of Clermont in France. Branton, a large underground genetics laboratory, is thought to be located just outside of Dulce, a tiny town in the midst of the Jicarilla Apache Indian Reservation located about 95 miles northwest of Los Alamos and 100 miles east of the sinister-sounding Highway 666. The only stretch of highway in the United States with that designation, and the only highway that links the four states of Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado and Utah. Perhaps it may just be a pure coincidence that this highway, befittingly named Highway 666, which originated in southeast Arizona and goes up north, cuts into northwestern New Mexico, right near the Four Corners area. An area that happens to have one of the most consistently concentrated UFO sighting reports in the country since around 1947. This entire Four Corners area, especially northwestern New Mexico and southwestern Colorado, even extending, for that matter, to the entire southern tip of the state, also has had some of the most concentrated reports of unexplained cattle mutilations in the nation during the late 70s and early 80s. Was something covertly taking place in those areas? Even though we could not locate the alleged underground genetics laboratory in Dulce when the Nippon television crew and I visited the area in late February of 1990, I had several opportunities to interview scores of local residents there that admitted that nightly appearances of mysterious lights, occasionally accompanied by unmarked black helicopters darting over, into and out of nearby Arculeta Mesa and Arculeta Mountains, were quite common during the late 70s and early 80s. Many of them even claimed to have spotted, on many occasions, military-type trucks and jeeps as well as government vans passing through Dulce and loitering around nearby mesas. Occasionally even black limousines carrying what appeared to be CIA agent types were claimed to have been sighted loitering around the foothills of other nearby mesas. We must bear in mind that the Dulce area is only 95 miles northwest of Los Alamos. Los Alamos National Laboratory is one of the top United States research laboratories specializing in the study of the human genome. Also, it is a vital center of the government's DIA research and development programs. Just about 100 miles southeast of Los Alamos is Albuquerque, New Mexico's largest city, and more significantly, a city where Kirtland Air Force Base is located right next to the sensitive Manzano Storage Facility, a top-secret underground military facility where nuclear warheads are stored. Sandia Corporation, one of the nation's top-secret government contractors specializing in top military industrial projects, is also located in Albuquerque. As far as advanced biotechnology is concerned, I have no doubt that a microchip implantation technology is being perfected in which tiny microchips could be implanted in our circulatory systems, vital organs and tissues if need be for whatever purpose the future may require. It is my conclusion that a large-scale research has been completed by the government with possible assistance from outside sources within the last 20 years or so, utilizing tens of thousands of cattle in the Southwest to conduct this covert experiment. Only recently has science proven that cow hemoglobin could be substituted by utilizing a special purification system with human blood in situations of unforeseen national emergencies. Chapter 6. Cosmic Top Secrets in the Dulce Base. The September 10, 1990 issue of UFO Universe related the following under the title heading, William F. Hamilton 3, Ufology's Mystery Man to Reveal Cosmic Top Secrets. Until just recently, William F. Hamilton 3 managed to keep up a relatively low profile so that he can continue his work in private and without needless interruption from well-meaning, and nevertheless prying eyes. Admittedly, his name is not known in every household, but the fact of the matter is that Bill is highly respected among his peers. Indeed, what he has to say is as important and vital as the words of flying ace John Lear and former Navy intelligence officer William Cooper, who have gone on record regarding the alien conspiracy. In fact, much of what Hamilton maintains is consistent with the theory that there is a massive government cover-up on UFOs and alien visitations that reaches right up to the president's private office door, and that the United States military has made a secret pact with a group of aliens known as the Greys. They are on Earth, mutilating cattle, and abducting humans for experimental purposes. Supposedly the Greys have taken over several top-secret underground military facilities, and certain branches of the government who are working hand-in-hand with these entities to bring about total domination of the world, while a second group of extraterrestrials is here trying to protect us. Of a highly controversial nature, many of Hamilton's statements may seem overly radical to even his closest associates, not to mention other investigators who refuse to even seriously consider the documentation he's able to present to bolster his case. About 10 years ago, a few scientists and engineers, who worked for NASA and shared an interest in UFO abductions, came together to form a group they called Project Visit, Vehicle Internal Systems Investigative Team. They studied about 130 cases of UFO abductions, with the goal of constructing a model of UFOs, their operation, and the entities who crew UFOs. They found UFOs have bright interior lighting. Abductees undergo a medical-type examination with apparently highly sophisticated equipment. Burns are suffered by many abductees. Time loss, from 20 minutes to 3 hours, is common. Project Visit member, Dr. Richard Niemco, described the crew members as 4 feet tall, hairless, gray in color, with no nose, a small mouth and large slanted eyes. The gray humanoid is emotionless and communicates by telepathy. The Greys have earned a reputation quite different than the Nordic blondes and other reported species. Most of the abductions are done by Greys and more than one variation of Grey. The Greys do most of the biological intervening on abductees. Tans, whites, and blues, that is, Greys of other skin colors, gray tan, gray white, gray blue, etc., Branton, have also been reported by abductees. I have personally had some sort of encounter with what I call the whites. They are small with extremely white skin and black, wrap-around eyes. Earth-made saucers. In April 1984, Lieutenant General George Bone, Vice Commander of the United States Air Force Systems Command, was killed while test flying a secret aircraft over the Groom Lake area, a top-secret facility located about 100 miles north of Las Vegas, Nevada. This facility is designated Area 51. The system's command reputedly uses this facility to test fly spy planes, such as the Senior 71 Blackbird or its successor, the Aurora. According to the February 1988 issue of Gung Ho magazine, which ran a feature article on Area 51, some of the craft being flown out of that test facility would make George Lucas drool. In the early 1980s, a radio technician working at Area 51 reported seeing a saucer on the ground. It was some 20 or 30 feet in diameter, he said, and when it flew, it moved silently through the air. The technician also viewed a number of wooden shipping crates marked Project Red Light. That project may have been a forerunner of Snowbird. Presently, the Air Force is trying to acquire 89.000 acres adjacent to the Groom Lake facility and to place the nearby Groom Mountains off limits to the public. Before and after the TV documentary UFO Cover-Up Live, there had been talk of an underground alien base located in the vicinity of the Groom Lake test site, known as Dreamland. This adds a whole new dimension to the idea of a secret space program and hints at fantastic secret programs that take us more than one step beyond. A friend of mine once moved to Riverton, Wyoming to escape from terrifying mysteries he encountered in New Mexico. He said the locals at Riverton asked him, "Are you here to work on the secret space project out at the jet airport?" Saucers were seen close to the ground in Riverton. One day my friend's truck broke down and he had to hitch a ride to town. A black Lincoln pulled up and a man dressed in black gave him a lift. The dashboard looked like a computer console. The MIB knew exactly where he wanted to be left off in front of the post office, but my friend had never told him. Alien implants? In 1980, when I lived in Glendale, Arizona, I received a call from my friend Walter Baumgartner, who published a magazine of limited circulation called Energy Unlimited. Walter was a natural technologist. He said that he had started working for a physicist by the name of Paul Benoist at Thunder Scientific Labs in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He then proceeded to tell me the fantastic story that Mr. Benoist had succeeded in communicating with aliens at an underground base situated near Mount Archuleta in the town of Dulce that was close to the Colorado border and situated on the Jicarilla Apache Indian Reservation. Note, Benoist actually stated that he interrogated the alien collective via a computer radio video link with an alien computer terminal, by tapping into the alien's ship-to-base communications frequency and using a type of hexadecimal mathematical code to break the alien encryption. He first discovered the signals using specialized equipment he had developed, and later concluded that these signals were also being used to influence abductees who had been given electronic mind control implants. Branton. He told me that these little gray aliens were abducting and implanting people with a device inserted at the base of the skull for the purpose of monitoring and controlling humans. He said that the government knew about this and was involved with alien activities. He also stated that the aliens feared our nuclear weapons and nuclear radiation. He told me that Paul was working on a weapon that would be effective against these aliens. Interjection by Branton regarding mind control implants. I know of a person who went to have some implants removed by doctors. The implants were removed, via the nasal cavity, from the nerve centers of the brain, some of her nerves being damaged in the process. This nerve damage resulted in a near-death experience following which, when she had awakened, she felt like a new person or that some other identity that had been operating in her was now gone. Some mystics may refer to alien intelligences that possess human minds as walk-ins. What many refer to as walk-ins are often artificial intelligence matrix implants which are attached to the nerve centers of the human brain. These serve as nodes for an alien collective and a parasite host capacity, allowing the aliens to physically utilize the human subject after an altered state of consciousness has been induced, and the human subject's individual consciousness is incapacitated. This transfer to the alternate consciousness often occurs at night. Also, both malevolent and relatively benevolent otherworldly cultures often induce within human subjects one or more alternate personalities which are taught or programmed to work and operate in the other realm. If the individual is left brain-dominant and right-handed in their conscious life, in the alternate life they may be right brain-dominant and left-handed, as is the case with my own elusive alternate identity. Other than saying that humans have one brain with two hemispheres, it would be just as legitimate to say that we have two brains in one cranium. In many cases where more benevolent humanoids are concerned, the individual may have flashes of memories of a double or alternate existence where they interact with external subterranean or even other dimensional humanoid societies, often in an intimate capacity, and in some cases even serve as starship crew members or pilots. In the case of the benevolent non-interventionists, such an alternate personality may be a means of interacting with Terrans without violating the laws of non-intervention and interfering with an Earth person's conscious life, although I myself would suggest that even this would be stretching non-interventionism to the limit. However, in the case of the malevolence, such alternate identities are programmed through intense mind control techniques with the intent of producing unconscious mind slaves for the alien collective. The secrecy and fear of the exposure of their interventionist agendas is in this case the motive for maintaining secrecy. What is especially confusing, however, is when one, as in my own personal case, has been infused with alternate personalities or identities by both benevolent and malevolent otherworldly cultures. In my personal case, this involved being patched into an alien collective mind, Ashtar, via implants and used by the dark side of that collective, or the interventionist elements within the Ashtar collective, such as the Orionite infiltrators that some contactees have spoken of who desire to use their positions to establish absolute control, only to later have this or another alternate personality matrix reprogrammed by a more benevolent faction of the Alliance. This more benevolent faction would either be involved with a separate federation, or it would be a faction that is part of the collective itself yet which is involved in an ongoing conflict with its darker side, a faction which is opposed to the interventionist control agendas of the infiltrators. One cannot comprehend the significance of the psychic battles that can rage through a single human mind until one has been caught in the crossfire between two opposing alternate personalities, one of which is an individualist and one of which is a collectivist, that are slugging it out for dominance of one's unconscious existence. The best one can do in such an event would be to try and retrieve as many suppressed memories as they are able, sort the whole mess out, and assimilate and take conscious control of those thought patterns that will be most beneficial to them and eliminate the harmful thought patterns. I will not deceive you, such a process can be very painful at times. After all, it is the root individual consciousness of a human being which has the final say as to just who that person is going to be, based on the universal law of free agency. For those of you who are reading this and who feel that they may have been programmed with an alternate alien personality which is activated during alien encounters, I will say for an absolute fact that according to universal law this collectivist alternate personality must submit to the demands of your conscious will. Anything else would be a direct violation of the non-intervention laws. Even without the assistance of alien psychotechnology, certain psychiatrists are fully aware of how easy it is to hypnotically induce an alternate personality within a human being, if they had access to the suppressed mind control techniques that have been used by certain intelligence agencies and occult fraternities. Branton. Underground bases. On April 1st and 2, I spent 24 hours visiting with John Lear at his home in Las Vegas. He took out a stack of papers and had me peruse them at my leisure. His study room had walls covered with aircraft photos and certificates. There was no doubt in my mind that John loved flying. John is a soft-spoken individual and frequently, while visiting him, I have watched him putter in the garden. We discussed Area 51. John had some long-distance photos of the Groom Lake facility. The one thing that stood out in one photo was the radio telescope pointing straight up in the midst of a group of buildings. The scope was probably tracking any overhead spy satellites. He showed me the reference in the February 1988 issue of Gung Ho magazine that insisted that spacecraft were being test-flown from this facility. John heard rumors that the Greys had a base under the Groom Mountains. This is the one we believe is called Dreamland. One of my sources, a leak, says DREAM is an acronym that stands for Data Repository Establishment and Maintenance. John told me the story of Mr. K, whose son Robert was trapped inside a joined human-alien underground base in Utah. This Robert had apparently worked at Dulce base at one time. Mr. K felt like he was being given the runaround by the military in his attempts to locate his son. I learned that there were a few technical people who worked at Sentia Labs in Albuquerque who were interested in alien activity. One man I talked to, CR, knew a mysterious Colonel Ronald Blackburn, who was reputed to have said that there were 600 aliens at the Groom Lake facility in Nevada. CR had investigated a UFO crash near Gallup, New Mexico in 1983. This one was also investigated by Tommy Roy Bland. I heard of Colonel Edwards at Albuquerque who knew the AFOC agent Richard Doty, both of whom worked with Paul Bennewitz in his investigations of the alien activity taking place at the Dulce base. Branton. Doty had talked to some investigators about the government cover-up. Why? I don't know. Weird happenings at Dulce. On April 19, 1988, my wife and I arrived at Dulce, New Mexico at about 4:30 p.m. Dulce was a beautiful little mountain town sitting at an elevation exceeding 7,500 feet. There was still snow on the ground by the Best Western Motel. I checked into the motel and called Gabe Valdez. He came over to see me about 9:30 p.m. We talked about UFOs and the cattle mutilations. He said that he had not seen any mutes since 1981 to 82. I had him read a letter written by Richard Doty in which Doty denies all involvement with UFO secrecy. He said Doty wasn't telling the truth. This proved true, because Doty started talking again. He told me that Doty wrote a report that stated that Paul Bennewitz was being investigated. Later Gabe offered us a ride around Dulce. He took us in his patrol car and showed us some of the routes. He said he saw glowing orange-lighted airships flying silently around the area frequently. He never saw these airships in daylight. We took a look at the Gomez Ranch, site of some of the mutes that took place in 1978. We asked about Bennewitz's belief that there was a secret underground alien base in the area. He said he believed about 80% of what Bennewitz said concerning alien activities in the area. He definitely seemed to think there was a base in the area, but his idea of where it is located was different than Paul's. He thought that the base might be south of Dulce, closer to the Gomez Ranch. He said he had not found any entries to the base. He had found landing tracks and crawler marks near the site of the mutes. He invited me to come back sometime and climb Mount Archuleta. Someday I would come back to Dulce, but I had no idea when. A lot started happening in October 1988. I started investigating the case of a couple who had gone up to a plateau on the south side of the Tehachapi Mountains, outside of Edwards F. Branton, not far from my house. At 2 in the morning they witnessed a large flashing orb come up from the ground and rise slowly into the sky. They experienced about 2 hours of missing time. Under hypnosis performed by a local hypnotherapist who had taken an interest in UFO abductees, we had found that the man recalled having been taken to an underground facility. He kept mentioning the Colonel. Chapter 7. At Dulce Vanguard at Deep Springs. It has been fairly well established that the Dulce, New Mexico network is the largest and most significant alien, reptiloid/gray, base network in North America. However, according to one source, there is also another nest near Deep Springs, California. This Dulce-connected base, because of its proximity, may pose an even greater threat to the humanoid residents of the subterranean network who have major city complexes below California, Mount Shasta, Panamint Mountains, 29 Palms area, etc. These colonies are reportedly being contested by draconian vanguard positions near Lake Port Hopeland, Mount Lassen and Deep Springs, California. On the other hand, some of the non-interventionist Nordic cultures reportedly have their own forward positions near the Four Corners or Colorado Plateau region where the reptiloids/grays have their major center of activity. Then there are other areas between the two sectors, between the Andropleiadine bases centered under Death Valley and the Draco-Orion bases centered under Archuleta Mesa where the collaborators meet. There are basically 3 alien networks at work on Earth: the anti-Grey Nordic Federation factions, the anti-Nordic Grey Empire factions and the Nordic Grey collaborators, which would also include those Terran intelligence agencies and occult lodges who are involved in the collaboration for whatever motive. Even within the collaboration, there is a great deal of struggle over whether the humanoid or reptiloid agendas should have the upper hand. Within the collaboration itself, speciesism, akin to racism, exists at certain levels. So in spite of the species prejudices, the collaboration continues nevertheless because of a marriage of convenience. In other words, the Greys want to take over the planet and impose a slave society to ultimately serve their empire, but they need the Illuminati's international economic connections to do so. And the Illuminati wants the same thing, but they realize that they need the alien mind control and abduction technology to accomplish their goals. So then, it is more of a love-hate relationship. They collaborate in order to set up a planetary government. However, both the humanoids and reptiloids are constantly plotting for the time when the world government arrives so that once it is established they can move in and take full control and expel the necessary collaborators, the humans doing away with the Greys, or the Greys doing away with the humans, or whatever the case may be. For instance, the Illuminati might negotiate with the Greys while at the same time develops D-weapons to potentially use against them. On the other hand, the Greys may continue negotiating with the humans while at the same time implanting microelectronic mind control devices in the human agents with whom they negotiate in order to ensure that they remain under alien control once the planet succumbs to the New World Order. So a one-world government will not bring peace to the planet, it will merely be a matter of fighting for control of one super-government rather than for many smaller ones. What many do not realize is that there appears to be a third element behind this agenda. A race of paraphysical entities that some might refer to as the Luciferians or the poltergeists, who are often described, by abductees who have encountered them, as being in the appearance of quasi-physical etheric or energy beings who have often been seen overseeing and directing the actions of the humanoid reptiloid collaborators. Although it might sound simplistic to imply that this cosmic battle is essentially being fought between the Nordic bases near Death Valley and the Grey bases near Arcoleta Mesa, the true fact of the matter is that when we are dealing with multi-leveled subterranean systems, the border zones are a little more complex than on the surface, where we have obvious horizontal borders between countries. In interplanetary warfare, the battle lines are horizontal, vertical and in some cases interdimensional. The battle would be one that is being waged above, below and within our society, even though the outward manifestations of that war might not be immediately seen for what they are, unless one is aware of the real conflict behind the scenes. There are also indications that at least certain factions of the NSA MJ-12 CIA aviary agencies have defected from the neo-Nazi New World Order agenda of joint interaction with the reptiloids/Greys, and are now at war with the same. Recently a researcher with the initials Kansas was approached by the family of a United States intelligence worker, O.S.I., by the name of Tucker, who had disappeared mysteriously. The family was concerned and frightened as they had discovered, in the personal locker of his, several papers describing intimate details of activities surrounding the Dulce, New Mexico and Nevada S4, etc. underground installations. Several of these papers are reproduced throughout this present work. Among this large stack of papers was hidden the following letter, which was stamped secret. The letter, copies of which were apparently also in the hands of a few other researchers as well, stated the following: Dear John, I am writing to you in the event that I do not return. There is a triangle surrounding the Nevada test site. There are in fact two of them. Each one frontiers on the other. One is the electromagnetic triangle, installed by MJ-12. This is a shield to protect the benevolents, very human-looking, from the EBs, the so-called extraterrestrial biological entities or Greys, Branton, while they help us develop our counterattacks/defenses. The other is the EBs trap, keeping the benevolents in the redoubt. At each corner of the M triangle you will find BLM stations, and they are the transmitters of the shield. Facing each one of these is an EB transmitter. There are many of these standoffs throughout the world. It is important that you do not interfere by attempting to destroy one of their surrounds. They would be able to double up somewhere else and overthrow that position. Once that link is overthrown, our support team would fail. Their overextension is deliberate on our part. We are like the Chinese. We can't out-technology them, but we can outnumber them. Especially since they can't breed here and it is too far for them to go back home without our help. Many of our triangles are ruses to keep them overextended. They can't get out of our solar system because our electromagnetic field, at this time, Branton, is the wrong frequency for their propulsion system to work efficiently. This explains why the EBs cannot commit more vehicles to our solar system. There have been comments among some contactees to the effect that occasionally the solar system passes through areas of differing electromagnetic variations as it moves in and out of cosmic energy streams that flow through the universe like a vast universal electromagnetic circulatory system. Certain energy fields are conducive to certain types of propulsion systems whereas others are not, and in these cases alternate or more conventional forms of propulsion must be resorted to. Some even suggest that large ships disguised as asteroids, planetoids or even comets are being used by the Greys and reptiloids in order to get around this propulsion problem and also to conceal their presence. These engineered planetoids are accompanied with conventional drives to serve as platforms for various operations, abductions, implantations, mutilations, and also mind control and infiltration activities taking place on or under planet Earth. All of this would seem logical, so as not to attract a great deal of attention and in return resistance from the masses. Some of these converted planetoids have been identified as Geographos, Phobos, and even Hale-Bopp comet, which is accompanied by many unusual anomalies not observed in most comets.
For instance, Hale-Bopp comet was 1,000 brighter than Halley's comet was at the distance from the Sun where it was discovered. This is because the halo is not caused by ice gas being blown from the surface of the object by solar winds as in the case of most comets. For some unexplained reason this comet is ejecting 7 large streamers or jets of dust gas from its interior. Many of these jets activate and deactivate at regular intervals. This is what creates the halo, and because of this the halo might have a distinct appearance when compared to past comets. Some contactees state that Hale-Bopp is being used by reptiloid entities from Draconis and Greys from Orion who have joined with the renegade Ashtar faction from Sirius B, resident within Hale-Bopp's companion. They are determined to back a world dictatorship by bringing the comet close to Earth in order to trigger the implants within abductees and simultaneously activate their unconscious subliminal programs via powerful transmitting devices. This is not to mention the potential and destabilizing shock value that this comet might pose to planetary political, economic and religious systems. It would seem that a federation of worlds, based in the Andromeda and Pleiades constellations, are attempting to blockade the interventionist actions of the Draco-Orion Empire in the Sol system. According to contactees, these Federation forces will soon be joined by a massive fleet from Sirius B, who are apparently Federation allies who have, let us hope, severed themselves from a large segment of the Ashtar collective which has since been infiltrated and taken over by Orion-based reptiloids and Greys. These Andropleiodine-backed Sirians have reportedly waged, and won, a civil war in Sirius B with the dark side, or the cultic renegade Ashtarian collaborators. They are now reportedly en route to the Sol system to do battle with the Draconian Orion forces and to convince the renegade Sirian collaborators who are working with them that they have and are being misled into an interventionist agenda. Like fanatical cultists, the rebel Sirians have blindly succumbed to the deceptions of the reptilians, Greys and the rebel angels in Hale-Bopp who are controlling the infiltrated segment of the Ashtar collective and are masquerading as ascended masters of the Ashtar command. At least this is what some contactees have implied. Are these contactees relaying the truth? I would guess that time will tell. As for the humans at the Nevada test site, these may be in fact, if we are to believe the collective revelations within this volume, victims of subtle reptilian propaganda and intimidation. For instance, this source who authored the letter about the EBS single quote apparently believes that all of the Saurian Greys or EBS come from extraterrestrial realms. However, as we have indicated, there is much evidence suggesting that reptiloid or Homosaurian activity exists deep within the subterranean cavernous levels throughout planet Earth, an intraterrestrial presence that has existed for many centuries, if not for thousands of years. This is one fact that the reptiloids have tried to hide from humankind, both terrestrial and extraterrestrial. Also, there are accounts suggesting that the reptiloids and Greys are in fact breeding profusely and reproducing themselves via deep subterranean polyembryony, cloning and incubation facilities below Dulce and elsewhere and are not as overextended as they might have us to believe. Some estimate that at the very least 20 million Greys are now actively operating under the surface of planet Earth within bases or within natural cavern systems. According to still others, 20 million is a conservative estimate. However, on the other hand, the fear that humanoids might have of prematurely attacking the enemy positions may possibly be the result of intimidation and propaganda intended to keep humans from taking offensive action, believing that they are keeping the Greys, etc., at bay when in fact the Greys are attacking offensively human society on several other hidden fronts via mass abductions, subliminal programming, implantation, psychic manipulation, recruiting of fifth-column human agents, and infiltration. I personally do not believe in standoffs. In war there is no neutrality. One is either attacking in various ways or capitulating themselves over to the enemy in various ways which those on the defensive side might not even be aware of. The letter which we have quoted earlier continues, the headquarters of this particular surround is Deep Springs, California. At this location one can find a school for communist homosexuals who have defected to the EBS in exchange for a cure for AIDS and a promise to their own little world, including reproduction via cloning and artificial wombs. Their sperm fertilize eggs taken from abductees. You will not likely see the hybrids hidden inside the mountain, unless you have starlit binoculars. Some Homosaphen-appearing malevolence mercenaries are also there. 9 Soviets were there at the same time Soviets were at the NTS. They were there in the hopes of talking them into defecting back to our side. We are still hopeful. The collaborators use the cover organization Natural Resources Defense Council, with front offices in New York and 1350 New York Avenue, NW, Suite 300, Washington, D.C. 20005, tel. 202-783-7800. It is headed by Tom Cochran, staffed by Kevin Priestley Unr, John Brun Unr, Holly Eisler on San Diego, Gary Reisling University Pasadena, Holly Nelson New York, Mary Manning LV Sun, Ed Vogel LVR, and many others I can reveal later. One will also find that each corner of their triangle is at the base of a mountain. At each location you will find several entrances to underground systems. Do not attempt to enter, unless you wish to become liquid protein. You may however harass the EB's two other corners by placing a large magnet on the vaults. Placing a magnet on the other two entrances at each location will not affect anything. This temporarily interrupts their communications with Deep Springs until a collaborator team comes out to see what is going on. If you place a large magnet on this entrance, it is a large computer near the surface, you can hear it, it will affect an immediate interruption. So, you can take it off in a short time, 1 hour, and take it with you. They will still have to come and reset the system. If you plant magnets, camouflaged like rocks, around these entrances, the EBs won't come out and the sellouts won't be able to find them. The EBs are also allergic to high concentrations of sugar and apparently other substances with a left-hand atomic spin, it has been claimed. Branton. You will find that at 2 locations I have poured sugar around their exits. Always wear magnets near these locations. They interrupt the EB's sense of direction due to an internal compass much like those found in migrating birds, similar to our loss of balance when our eardrum is affected. Please wait until I have returned. If you have an airplane, I would like to take aerial photos, we can photograph them together. Our alliance crest, symbolic of the shield, and our sign/mark/graffiti is enclosed. Do not reveal them or else everybody will use them and you won't know the real from the pseudos. You do not know me. I do not know you. This is not for public dissemination. Zealots may disrupt the balance before VEB Day. Another researcher by the pseudonym of Jason Bishop has revealed that John, to whom the letter was addressed, is none other than John Lear, who himself claims many connections with people in the know who go right to the top. According to the letter, both the Nevada test site and Deep Springs are areas of conflict between the United States government, Nordic Alliance and the Socialist, Reptiloid Grey Alliance. In this context, socialist could indicate either National Socialist or Global Socialist. Both hold the same basic philosophies of tyranny yet different methods for bringing them to pass. Both have the same roots and are apparently twin pincers in a deadly Machiavellian game that is being carried out by the Bavarian Illuminati, which backed the communists by sending Lenin from Germany to Russia to incite the Bolshevik Revolution, and the Bavarian Thule Society, which backed the Nazis by grooming Adolf Hitler for his part as Nazi dictator. Yet most importantly it is being orchestrated by the international black nobility banking cults that have kept Europe under their financial grip since around 500 AD. These are the same bankers who claim direct descent from the royal families of the ancient Roman and unholy Roman empires, families who have ties to both Bavarian cults, Thule and Illuminati, and in turn with the aliens. Jason Bishop also released some other information he received by way of John Lear, from the individual whose letter we've just quoted. According to Lear, the author of the letter was actually a security officer at the test site who had called into the Billy Goodman talk show, Veg Radio, Las Vegas, Nevada, on a few occasions, before Goodman went to Southern California to take over a more lucrative talk show position. This person used the codename, Yellowfruit, which he claimed was actually the codename for a top-secret security division that worked at the site, with which he was involved. If also sent to Lear a copy of the Benevolent Teachings. The Benevolents are reportedly working at the test site with MJ-12 and are blonde Nordic and Dorarian-like people. I would personally guess that the benevolent ones are members of the Exterran Andropleiadine Federation and Dora members of the Subterran Telosian Agardi Alliance, which has maintained ties with the Ashtar Collective, or in this case the non-collaboration faction of that collective. The benevolent teachings, not limited to the below, were identified as follows: discouraged, non-preparatory sports activities that cannot be used in non-sporting life, motocross, auto racing, skateboarding, roller skating, football, baseball, hockey. Also discouraged, processed sugar, recreational carbohydrates, recreational fluids, white bread. Encouraged, non-ceremonial lessons of the major religions and preparatory sports activities that can be used in non-sporting life, swimming, running, hiking, martial arts, survival arts. Teach your children. Forbidden: alcohol, illegal drugs, nicotine, recreational drugs, unjustifiable homicide. Must: avoid weakness. Evil grows in weakness. Execute evil prisoners in order to help other prisoners. Editor's note: another possibility that might be interjected here is to establish a completely secured underground prison cave and place all of the worst offenders there and leave them to themselves, to either work out their problems or destroy each other, whichever they choose. Branton. Must: quarantine contagious disease, AIDS, victims humanely. Show strength. Stop illegal drugs. Stop destruction of environment. Stop pollution. Use nuclear power. Study: Bill of Rights, biology, computers, economics, geography, history, Latin, mathematics, philosophy, survival skills, United States of America's Declaration of Independence, United States of America's Constitution, vocational skills. Yellow Fruit also provided coordinates for the electromagnetic triangles he referred to in his letter. These include: small bullet A-N37, 22, 30, E117, 58-0. Small bullet B-N38, 21-0, E115, 35-0. Small bullet C-N35, 39-0, E114, 51-0. Small bullet C-Map here. Small bullet also Yucca Lake, N37-0, 30, E116, 70. The following information, from William F. Hamilton III, describes further details on the Yellow Fruit account, including claims which the Nevada test site agent made over the air during the few interviews which were heard over at Veg Radio's Billy Goodman talk show. It is also interesting that Com-12 member Michael Younger, who has given lectures on the Nazi presence within the Rockefeller-backed oil companies, Nazi war criminals, and their families who were smuggled into America following World War II and given refuge within the Rockefellers' corporate empire. The plans the Nazis/Bavarians had for selling out the planet to the aliens in exchange for 1/4 of the New World Order. And a massive Nazi child abduction and satanic ritual sexual abuse and murder ring operating within ARCO, etc. is, or at least was at one time, also a worker at the Nevada test site. This suggests that COM-12 is intimately involved in the counter-offensive against the Greys. Yellow Fruit revealed that a conflict was going on between the benevolent ones and the Ebs, and that now the benevolent ones had gained the upper hand at Dreamland, where he said a contingent of 37 benevolent ones were stationed and where 3 Ebs were held in captivity. Bizarre. Science fiction? Yellow Fruit knew a lot about the test site area. I resolved to go to the location he gave of the Ebb installation in Deep Springs, California, and then on to visit Pat at the Rachel Bar and Grill to make contact with Yellow Fruit, the name for the first level of security force at Area 51 and also the name of an old Army CIA unit. The second level of security he called Sea Spray, and intimated that you would have an encounter of the unpleasant kind if you ever met with them. Callers to the Billy Goodman radio happening had already organized trips to mile marker 29 1/2 on Highway 375, where a dirt road left the highway to intersect the road to Dreamland. There was a heavy blackmail box on this road which identified it. I got to Rachel early one October morning and left my card with Pat at Rachel's Bar and Grill to pass on to Yellow Fruit. She knew him by sight. I then inspected the dirt roads where people stood to observe the test flights. I had already interviewed 4 witnesses by phone who testified that they had seen UFOs over the Groom Mountains on certain nights in the same area they were seen by John Lear. I made a second trip to the area in late October, where a public group visited Rachel, and that is when I saw the mysterious Yellow Fruit in the cafe. He later called me on the phone. I left him with a copy of my book, Alien Magic, and he remarked on the research I had done concerning the search for underground bases. According to Yellow Fruit and others, there are underground bases and tunnels that conceal the activities of the aliens and secret government projects. One more note on the Nevada test site, Area 51, Groom Lake, Dreamland underground facilities. Aside from reports that Dulce, Utah serves as an underground link between Dreamland and Dulce, there's the added claim that another underground link exists farther south, at Page, Arizona. Anyone who has been to the Glen Canyon Dam, Lake Powell, could easily observe how the dam might be used as an entrance to such a base, and how the large hydroelectric facility might power the base operations. The Glen Canyon Dam connection was not specifically mentioned by former Dulce base security officer Thomas E. Costello, who named Page, Arizona as a connecting base. However, if there is a base under Page, then it would be logical to utilize this hydroelectric facility in one form or another. Chapter 8. An Alien Fifth Column on Earth. The mysterious government insider, whose books have been published by Tim Beckley's Abelard Press of New York, Commander X, related a very interesting incident which involved the subterranean mega-complex beneath Dulce, New Mexico. In another case, an old illustrator, John D., does very painstaking work, but during his being on active duty at Dulce he began to act very queerly. He would write letters to the president informing him of a plot underway to undermine the government, and to sabotage the base. He began to draw pictures of American flags, beautifully executed. He drew strange designs of mechanical devices, began to visit the library and bring back books on physics and advanced electronics. He hardly knew how to spell the words. He would patiently explain something of a very technical nature which he shouldn't have understood. When asked what he was raving about and why he was causing trouble by writing the president, John D. would say that he had been sensitized. Last year when I was sick, John D. explained, the doctor on the base gave me sulfanilamide. There is a fifth column in this country that is tied up with aliens. Selenium is being slipped into sulfa drugs, and this selenium lodges in the bones and makes the body receptive to extremely short waves, those in the waveband of the brain. Similar to the waves that can be detected by the encephalograph. About 300,000 people in this country have been sensitized, and at least 7 secret radio stations have been set up in this country, and they are broadcasting to these sensitized persons, instructing them in the best way to perform acts of sabotage against our planet. These claims as given by the Dulce worker, John D., are incredible indeed, and could easily be dismissed as the ravings of a madman, if not for the fact that many others are saying basically the same thing, that there is a movement underway to bring the minds of the masses under the subjection of an alien force, whether through electronic implantation and control, subliminal programming, or through other means. Why would the controllers use the United States as the major target of their activity? We believe that this is due to the fact that the United States is a place that was originally intended by its founding fathers to be a refuge for peoples from all nations to come and work out their collective destinies free from the restrictions of prejudice and the oppressiveness of tyrannical rule, a land where all people could express their creativity, culture and individual destinies without interference. This was their intention. However, it is obvious that the dream has not been fully realized because of collective and governmental compromise of the principle that all men are created equal. The United States, nevertheless, is unlike any other single nation. It is a cultural melting pot and a place where not only international human societies on the surface converge and intermingle in a dramatic way, but apparently where human societies beneath or beyond the earth converge as well. For instance, according to various reports, most non-surface human societies who are aware of planet Earth have their representatives walking among us in our own society and to some extent, other nations throughout the world, although many of these choose to keep a low profile for either honorable or not so honorable reasons. Another factor is the respect which the Bill of Rights gives to all American citizens, allowing for personal freedom and individuality so long as the freedom and individuality of others is not threatened. Individuality is the mortal enemy of the alien hive, you could say. Though the United States, then, seems to be in essence a world scenario, if not a universal scenario in miniature, and therefore the conspiracy sees it as a most valuable prize. Therefore it would probably not be too far out to suggest that the war between the human and serpent races from all three realms, extraterrestrial, ultraterrestrial and intraterrestrial, converge within the United States, and to be more exact, within the vicinities of the Arcoleta Plateau near Dulce, New Mexico, a major Earth base of the reptiloid interventionist empire forces. The Death Valley region of California, a major Earth base of the humanoid non-interventionist Federation forces. And then we have the battlegrounds between the American COM-12 Cabal Philadelphia Nordic and the Bavarian Aquarius Magi Phoenician reptiloid forces within high-security military complexes like those which permeate the underground territories below California, Nevada, Utah, Idaho, Arizona, Colorado, Oklahoma and New Mexico. And apparently centered specifically in or near Small Bullet, the underground military industrial systems beneath Lancaster, California. Small Bullet Mercury, Nevada. Small Bullet Burley, Idaho. Small Bullet Dalgway, Utah. Small Bullet Page, Arizona. Small bullet. The underground systems below the Denver International Airport of Colorado. Small bullet. And also below Oklahoma City. All of these basing areas are seen by the proponents of the New World Order as strategic sites that they must maintain control of if they are to force America to submit to a one-world government. Chapter 9. Technological Terrorism and the Dulce Base. The elusive Commander X has, through his reported connections within the intelligence community, released still further revelations regarding the dark secrets of Dulce. The commander claims to be a member of the Committee of 12. Com-12, an obscure intelligence group which is working to educate the public about the joint fascist alien threat to America and preserve our constitutional-based republic as it was established by the original founders of the United States. There were over 650 attendees to the 1959 Rand Symposium. Most were representatives of the corporate industrial state, like the General Electric Company, AT&T, Hughes Aircraft, Northrop Corporation, Sandia Corporation, Colorado School of Mines, etc. Bechtel, pronounced Bechtel, a San Francisco-based organization. Branton is a super-secret international corporate octopus, founded in 1898. Some say the firm is really a shadow government, a working arm of the CIA. It is the largest construction and engineering outfit in the USA and the world. And some say, beyond. The most important posts in the USA government are held by former Bechtel officers. They are part of the Web, an interconnected control system which links the Trilateralist Plans, the CFR, the Order of Illuminism, Cult of the All-Seeing Eye, and other interlocking groups. Mind-manipulating experiments. The Dulce base has studied mind control implants, BioC units, ELF devices capable of mood, sleep and heartbeat control, etc. DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, is using these technologies to manipulate people. They establish the projects, set priorities, coordinate efforts, and guide the many participants in these undertakings. Related projects are studied at Sandia Base by the Jason Group of 55 scientists. They have secretly harnessed the dark side of technology and hidden the beneficial technology from the public. Other projects take place at Area 51 in Nevada. Small Bullet Dreamland, Data Repository Establishment and Maintenance Land. Small Bullet Element, Electromagnetic Intelligence. Small Bullet Cold Empire. Small Bullet Code Ava. Small Bullet Program is Hybrid Intelligence System. Small Bullet BW/CW. Small Bullet Iris, Infrared Intruder Systems. Small Bullet Bypass. Small Bullet Reptiles, etc. The studies on Level 4 at Dulce include Small Bullet Human Aura Research. Small Bullet as well as all aspects of dream. Small Bullet Hypnosis. Small Bullet Telepathy, etc. Research. Small Bullet they know how to manipulate the bioplasmic body. Small Bullet they can lower your heartbeat with deep sleeve delta waves, induce a static shock, then reprogram, via a brain-computer link. Small Bullet they can introduce data and programmed reactions into your mind. Information impregnation. The Dream Library. We are entering an era of technologicalization of psychic powers. Small Bullet the development of techniques to enhance man/machine communications. Small Bullet Nanotech. Small Bullet Biotech Micro Machines. Small Bullet C-War. Small Bullet EDOM Electronic Dissolution of Memory. Small Bullet RHIC Radio Hypnotic Intracerebral Control. Small Bullet and various forms of behavior control via chemical agents, ultrasonics, optical and other irradiations. Small Bullet the physics of consciousness. Surviving the future. The Dulce facility consists of a central hub, the security section, also some photo labs. The deeper you go, the stronger the security. This is a multi-leveled complex. There are over 3,000 cameras at various high-security locations, exits and labs. There are over 100 secret exits near and around Dulce, many around Arcoleta Mesa, others to the source around Dulce Lake, and even as far east as Lindrick. Deep sections of the complex connect into extensive natural cavern systems. Inside the Dulce base, security officers wear jumpsuits, with the Dulce symbol on the front, upper left side. The Dulce symbol consists of an upside-down triangle with an inverted T superimposed over it, Branton. The ID card used in card slots, for the doors and elevators, has the Dulce symbol above the ID photo. Government honchos use cards with the Great Seal of the United States on it. The Cult of the All-Seeing Eye, the New World Order, 13, 666, the Phoenix Empire, 9, Illuminism, one out of many, and so on. The Phantom Board, above the law. Most meetings of the Dulce board are held in Denver and Taos, New Mexico. A former United States Senator has full knowledge of Dulce. He was among the group that included a number of very prominent government figures who toured the base, that is most likely the upper levels only, Branton. In 1979, an animal mutilation conference took place in Albuquerque, New Mexico. This meeting was used to locate researchers and determine what they had learned about the link between the that is mutilation operations and the alien government. Another senator knows about the ultra-secrets at Greenland and Dulce. Several of my official sources have confirmed this to me. So do many others in government. This is what the UFO researchers are up against. So be careful. You know more than they want you to know. They have also underwater bases off the coast of Florida and Peru. More detailed information will be released in the near future. Photos, videotapes, documents, etc. Watch out for special agents among you now. In the 1930s, Division 5 of the FBI knew about the aliens. A fascist cabal within this country had John Kennedy assassinated. Look to the links within the larger umbrella. The web of a fascist totalitarian secret police state. Within the Pentagon, JCS, DIA, FBI, Division 5, /DISM the DIA. Note, the Defense Investigative Services insignia is a composite of the sun's rays, a rose and a dagger, symbolizing the search for information, trustworthiness and danger. This links with caves used for initiation rites all over the world. Ancient vaults, retreats, underground bases, etc. Commander X also stated that, recently, participants in a field investigation of the area near Archuleta Mesa were confronted by two small hovering spheres. They all became suddenly ill and had to leave the area. We have passed the point of no return in our interaction with the alien, that is reptilian gray beings. We are guaranteed a crisis which will persist until the final revelation or conflict. The crisis is here, global and real. We must mitigate or transform the nature of the disasters to come, and come they will. Knowing is half the battle. Read the book, The Cosmic Conspiracy, by Stan Deo. Chapter 10. The Deep Dark Secret at Dulce. The FEB. Mar. 1991 issue of UFO Universe carried an article titled The Deep Dark Secret at Dulce, written by Bill Hamilton and Tal Levesque. If planet Earth is to be the central battleground or staging ground for a final cosmic battle between galactic superpowers, and if the United States is one of the major areas on Earth where the final outcome will be decided, and since the Dulce, New Mexico area is considered to be the major basing site where human-alien collaboration and/or conflict is taking place, then we should focus our attention on what has been going on deep beneath this small southwestern town. More than any other area in the United States, if not the world. This small town has been the epicenter for nearly every form of paranormal activity one can imagine, including UFO sightings, UFO landings, abductions, implantations, human and animal mutilations, sea warfare studies, secret government alien interaction, the United States constitutional government versus alien agenda conflicts, reptilian sightings, cryptozoological or bioengineering phenomena. This was the general area where the famous Cabot, the half-cat/half-rabbit, was captured. Underground bases, conspiracy scenarios, alien infiltration, deep cavern phenomena, super high-tech activity, mega encounters. In fact, a higher concentration of such activities has been evident in the vicinity of Dulce than any other area in the world, to the point that the inhabitants of this town have for the most part resigned themselves into acknowledging, although not necessarily accepting, the reality of such activity, whether they like it or not. Bill Hamilton and Tal Levesque take us inside the Hadean-like labyrinths deep within this underground mega-complex, through the eyes of those who have actually been there, so brace yourselves. Dulce is a sleepy little town in northern New Mexico. Its population is about 900 and it is located above 7,000 feet on the Jicarilla Apache Indian Reservation. There is one major motel and just a few stores. It is not a resort town and it is not bustling with activity. Yet, according to a few outsiders, Dulce harbors a deep, dark secret. That secret is said to be harbored deep below the tangled brush of Archuleta Mesa. That secret involves a joint government alien biogenetic laboratory designed to carry out bizarre experiments on humans and animals. New Mexico State Police Officer Gabe Valdez was drawn into the mysteries of Dulce when called out to investigate a mutilated cow on the Manuel Gomez Ranch in a pasture 13 miles east of Dulce. Gomez had lost 4 cattle to mutilations between 1976 and June 1978 and several more in ensuing years. Branton, when the team of investigators, which included Tom Adams, arrived from Paris, Texas to examine the site of the carcass. Curious as to how cattle were being selected by the mysterious mutilators, an interesting experiment was conducted on July 5, 1978 by Valdez, Gomez, and retired scientist Howard Burgess. The three penned up about 120 of the Gomez beef cattle and moved them through a squeeze chute under an ultraviolet light. They found a glittery substance on the right side of the neck, the right ear, and the right leg. Samples of the affected hides were removed as well as control samples from the same animals. Some investigators attribute the mutilations to aliens from UFOs. Sightings of strange lights and other aerial phenomena have been reported in many areas where the cows have been found at the time of the reported mutilation. UFOs have been seen frequently around Dulce. I arrived in Dulce on April 19, 1988, to visit with Gabe Valdez and to inquire about the sightings, the mutes, and the rumors of an underground alien base in the area. There was still snow on the ground by the Best Western Motel when I checked in and called Valdez. He made an appointment to see me at 9:30 p.m. I found Gabe to be a very congenial host as he offered to show us around the roads of Dulce that night and point out the various locations where he had found mutilated cows or had seen strange aerial lights. He made the astounding statement that he was still seeing unidentified aircraft at the rate of 1 every 2 nights. We took a look at the Gomez Ranch, the road by the Navajo River, and the imposing Arcoleta Mesa. Gabe had found landing tracks and crawler marks near the site of the mutes. Gabe was convinced that scientist Paul Benoitz of Thunder Scientific Labs in Albuquerque was definitely on the right track in his attempts to locate an underground alien facility in the vicinity of Dulce. I had first heard of Paul Benoitz in 1980 when my friend Walter called me from Albuquerque and told me he had been working with Paul on electronic instruments. Walter said Paul had not only photographed UFOs, but had established a communication link with their underground base at Dulce. Benoitz had first come to prominence during the August 1980 sightings of UFOs over the Manzano weapons storage area and Kirtland F. A Kirtland F. incident report dated October 28, 1980 mentions that Benoitz had taken film of UFOs over Kirtland. Paul was president of Thunder Scientific Labs adjacent to Kirtland. Benoitz gave a briefing in Albuquerque detailing how he had seen the aliens on a video screen via a computer radio-video link he had developed using a hexadecimal code after tapping into their ship-to-base communications frequency, Paul himself being a brilliant scientist who has developed equipment for the space shuttles and several Fortune 500 companies. Branton. The aliens were transmitting signals from a base underneath Arcoleta Mesa. Researcher William Moore claims that government agents became interested in Benoitz's activities and were trying to defuse him by pumping as much disinformation through him as he could absorb. Whether Paul's communication with supposed aliens at the Dulce base was part of this disinformation campaign is unclear. If one were to believe that Paul is the single source of reports on the Dulce facility, then it could also be a tactical maneuver to discount and discredit Paul's allegation of an underground base if such reports were meant to remain secret. Then the actual disinformation maneuver would be to disinform the public and not a single individual. In a report entitled Project Beta, Paul states that he had spent 2 years tracking alien craft, that he had constant reception of video from an alien ship and underground base view screen, that he had established constant direct communications with the aliens using a computer in a form of hexadecimal code with graphics and printout, and claims to have used aerial and ground photography to locate the alien ship's launch ports and charge beam weapons. Paul claimed that the aliens were devious, employed deception, and did not adhere to agreements. Paul and Walter were working on a weapon that would counter the aliens. Some will think at this point that we have crossed over from the land of clear thinking concerning anomalous phenomena to the land of science fiction. But let us remember that bizarre phenomena such as the UFOs represent may have its roots in a bizarre reality. It is expected to be bizarre at first, but as we continue our studies we will evolve to understand it. Paul Benoitz had investigated the case of abductee Myrna Hansen of New Mexico, who reported having been taken to an underground facility in May 1980. Krista Tilton of Oklahoma has reported that she had an experience of missing time in July 1987, where she had been abducted by two small gray aliens and transported in their craft to a hillside location where she encountered a man dressed in a red military-like jumpsuit. She was taken into a tunnel through computerized checkpoints displaying security cameras. She reported having been taken on a transit vehicle to another area where she stepped on a scale-like device facing a computer screen. After the computer issued her an identification card, she was told by her guide that they had just entered level 1 of a 7-level underground facility. Krista goes on relating how she was eventually taken down to level 5. She reports having seen alien craft and little gray alien entities in some of the areas that she passed through. Krista reports going into one large room where she saw large tanks with computerized gauges hooked to the tanks and large arms that extended from some tubing down into the tanks. She noticed a humming sound, smelled formaldehyde, and was under the impression that some liquid was being stirred in the tanks. Krista has made drawings of much of what she had witnessed during her abduction. These tanks Krista talks about were depicted in a set of controversial papers called the Dulce papers. These papers were allegedly stolen from the Dulce underground facility along with 30 black and white photos and a videotape by a mysterious security officer who claims to have worked at Dulce up until 1979, when he decided that the time had come to part company with his employers. The rest of the story is about this security officer who has met with one of us in an attempt to tell us the truth about the aliens, the United States government, and the Dulce base. He is announcing his intention to come out of hiding and present soft and hard evidence of his claims. It will be up to you to decide whether this evidence constitutes an addition to the growing proof that a government cover-up exists. In late 1979, Thomas Costello could no longer cope with the awesome reality he had to confront. As a high-level security officer at the Joint Alien-U.S. government underground base near Dulce, he had learned of and had seen disturbing things. After much inner conflict, he decided to desert the facility and take various items with him.